On one day, a massive rift cracked open the sky, releasing a strange blue aura. It blanketed the entire world in an instant, and humanity called it mana. Those highly sensitive to this energy suddenly gained extraordinary powers. They became known as the Awakened, earning immense respect from society. Eventually, the mana storm settled, but the massive tear in the sky remained. Just as everyone adapted to this new reality, things took a dark turn. More mana storms erupted, and mysterious portals known as gates began to open. Vicious, bloodthirsty monsters poured out, plunging the entire world into absolute chaos. Our protagonist, Shin Juno, always believed his life would change once he awakened. He was completely exhausted from slaving away at dead-end jobs without any breaks. Even so, he never actually dreamed of becoming some famous idol. He just wanted to stop getting beaten up and robbed by others. But turning into a villain was definitely out of the question, too. He really just wanted a true friend, but that was apparently asking too much. Instead, he ended up as a useless D-rank support hunter that everyone ridiculed. Deep down, Shin Juno always expected to meet a tragic, yet glorious end. In a bizarre vision, he walked across massive celestial swords floating toward the rift. Naturally, he did not want to die, but crossing over brought him face to face with a beast. Staring down the massive monster, he refused to let his death be this pathetic. If he could just get one more chance, he swore he would become stronger. Despite being a mere support, he somehow completed all the conditions to become a player. With his destiny shifting, the system officially invited him to join the game. Cut to the present, and Shin Juno is sprinting down the street at full speed. He absolutely cannot afford to be late on the most important day of his life. The waiting party is relieved when he arrives, but Hunter Lim Do-won is furious. He scolds the rookie for being late, but Kim Kai-min immediately steps in. She casually asks if none of them have ever run late before. Catching his breath, Shin Juno apologizes, explaining his role as a weapon creator. Lim Do-won laughs it off as a joke, while Kim Kai-min tells them to move. The others, Hunwoo and Do-yeon, are already waiting inside the dungeon entrance. Shin Juno is incredibly stressed since he only joined this guild 3 months ago. To make matters worse, this is his very first raid, and he messed up the timing. He tries to calm his nerves, knowing he has to prove his worth today. As they head inside, Do-yeon asks if this is really his first raid. He is an elite B-rank assassin, possessing immense combat power. Shin Juno nervously nods, confirming that he is strictly playing a support role. Do-yeon advises him that since supports cannot fight, positioning is absolutely everything. Standing too close means getting crushed in the crossfire of intense combat. But straying too far makes it impossible for the frontline to protect him. Maintaining the perfect sweet spot is the golden rule for any support. As a weapon creator, Shin Juno needs to stay safe while prepping gear. Do-yeon instructs him to forge a dagger the moment he gets the signal. Shin Juno is surprised, wondering if a simple dagger is actually enough. Do-yeon assures him that it is perfect since he is the only one needing a backup. He explains that the dungeon is simple enough and they will get through it easily. For his first raid, he shouldn't overexert himself. Suddenly, the mage senses mana nearby. The sensory hunter Lee Hyun-woo detects it. A dangerous monster is close. Dune orders everyone to gear up and form ranks. Hyun-woo calls out that there are 3 small mana signatures up ahead, along with one massive signature that is strong enough to be the boss. Dune is suspicious. Bosses do not usually wander around. He decides to handle the boss alone, leaving the rest of the squad to clear the minions. Turning to his support, Dune asks how fast he can forge a dagger. Shin Juno answers that if it is extremely urgent, he can forge one in 20 seconds. But it breaks in under a minute. The commander shrugs. A 40-second window is all he has. Talk about a tight deadline. Crystal lizards, they feed directly on the dungeon's mana stones. The tank Tijayo yells that he is moving in and charges the beasts head-on. Jimin strikes immediately after, landing a massive, devastating blow on her target. She dashes between the creatures. One by one, they drop. But wait, they are regenerating way too fast. After warning her ally, 2 lizards snap their heads up and rush him. The tank yells for magical backup, and Lee Hyun-woo shouts that he is ready. Unleashing his spell, the mage rains down massive fireballs. With the targets eliminated, Hyun-woo signals success and earns high praise from Dune. Everyone takes a breather. Watching them, Shin Juno is stunned. This is how real guilds fight, and honestly, it is absolute poetry in motion. Knowing there is absolutely no room for distraction, Shin Juno forces himself to lock in. He confirms the gear is ready, purely focused. Channeling his mana, the basic skill of his creator class flares to life. Juno throws the dagger, Dune catch. It is an A-rank shadow weapon. Its raw power scales with the user's mana. The timer is ticking down as Dune charges the monster with the blade. He swings with blinding speed, delivering a lethal slash. The shadow weapon does its job. The head flies off. Just like that, it is over. He feels a wave of satisfaction. Time to leave. With the battle over, they take roll call. Everyone is accounted for and unharmed. Juno is amazed. These guys are insanely strong. Every single one of them has unique talents, and they work together flawlessly. An incredible squad. One day they will reach the top. Yet looking at them, Shin Juno feels small. All he did was forge a single dagger. He feels like he barely contributed. Just then, Dune walks over to him. Praising his hard work, the leader asks if Shin Juno took any damage. Shin Juno shakes his head. He says he is fine, but admits he felt pretty useless out there. The commander looks surprised. A support skill like this saves a fortune. Dune explains his skills actually destroy his weapons. Buying cheap, low-grade junk from the market gets way too expensive over time. That is why he needs a creator. He only needs mana-infused gear to trigger his attacks. Dune pats him on the back. He congratulates his support on an amazing debut. This first raid is officially a success. It was a huge success. Shin Juno promised he would eagerly await the next raid. He wanted to meet their expectations. Suddenly, everything around them began shaking. Was it an earthquake? Would the cave collapse now that the boss was dead? Shin Juno quickly pointed out a collapsing wall. Behind it, a secret path opened. Magician Li Haiyan-Wu noticed that the newly opened tunnel looked suspicious. It clearly led somewhere. Leader Du Yun suggested this might be a secret path. Lim Daowen had absolutely no doubts about it. What else could it be but a path to treasure? Kim Chimin supported the idea, but their magician noted they couldn't go in unprepared. The leader insisted they would move fast, confident that nothing else would cave in. Li Haiyan-Wu agreed. If that was the case, he was ready to go. The commander then ordered Shin Juno, their support member, to tag along with them. They would head down the secret path together in search of the rumored treasures. With that, the group of hunters set off directly into the dark unknown. Cut to a bit later, Shin Juno is running for his life from a massive monster. He didn't understand how everything went so wrong. Everyone else was already dead. He was the sole survivor. A beast this terrifying shouldn't exist in a D-rank dungeon. He had never even heard of monsters that completely hid themselves from magic. Shin Juno glanced back and saw the creature closing in. Would it catch him? The beast slammed into his back, launching him forward. Blood instantly sprayed from his mouth. Bleeding heavily, Shin Juno desperately tried to pick himself up off the ground. He knew he couldn't stop. Shin Juno refused to die here when he had other goals. The support class hunter activated his blade and threw it directly at the monster. The blade hit its mark, making the monster shriek out in pure pain. But the strike wasn't fatal. The beast easily knocked him down once again. A heavy punch to the chest knocked Shin Juno completely unconscious. As he drifted in darkness, one painful thought kept repeating in his mind. A useless D-rank support who couldn't even perform basic healing spells. He thought he had found a guild that needed him, yet he ran away like a coward. He abandoned them like a pathetic loser. Any other player would have been useful. It would have been better if he had never awakened, but fate had other plans. His completely unattainable dream was suddenly not so impossible after all. The system announced that Rodnik had been discovered. He had fulfilled all conditions. He met all requirements to obtain player status as Shin Juno slowly woke up. His mind cleared as screens flooded in, revealing a brand new reward. Shin Juno had no idea what was happening. Honestly, he didn't care anymore. Shin Juno climbed the invisible steps. He stepped through the crack and came face to face with a massive beast. The system announced that weapon creator Shin Juno was regaining memories of his past. The reward delivery was complete, but the hero was completely lost. Where did these strange, vivid memories even come from? Just then, the nearby monster lunged forward to attack him. Sensing the hostile threat, Shin Juno immediately decided to counterattack. But the monster took 0 damage. For a golem, this thing was incredibly durable. If his memories were correct, its weak points and patterns remained the same. These golem-type monsters had no obvious physical weak points. The golem recovers instantly, triggers Grid World, realizing he must hit multiple points. He stands right at the very center as a massive glowing grid begins to materialize. Boundaries stretch far into the distance, locking down the entire battlefield. With a single thought, Shin Juno controls the field and unleashes a highly sophisticated strike. The massive golem cannot withstand the sheer pressure and shatters into pieces. Shin Juno lets out a heavy sigh of relief. His intermediate goal is complete. That massive golem monster is down. He always assumed Grid World was just a support skill. Something meant to speed up item crafting, but with enough mastery, it becomes lethal. Turns out it makes for a pretty terrifying offensive maneuver. Then, a notification pops up. The boss is finally dead. Shin Juno cannot find any information about this dungeon or the monster he just killed. He senses an insane spike in mana. His passive absorption triggers. As the energy floods in, memories of a past life flash before his eyes. Shin Juno has no idea what a past life even means, but this is definitely him. It is a dark echo from his own future. It completely terrifies him. The future is a completely ruined wasteland. Honestly, it is too horrific to even describe. Yet he slowly absorbs all the combat experience and knowledge from that terrible timeline. Even if that was his destiny, he refuses to let this world end up like that. Things are already changing. Suddenly, a glowing blue status window appears right before him. He is officially a player, a title reserved only for the chosen elite. Those who awaken with special potential. According to his memories, no other players exist yet. In about 2 years, only a few will awaken. These select few will gain access to the system. A blue screen materializes before him. It is invisible to anyone else. In his past timeline, this system shocked the world. Awakened ones were stunned. Players did not just get a neat system interface, though. They received exclusive rewards, broken skills, and power normal people could only dream of. Normal awakened could not compare. With these out-of-nowhere rewards, players grew at an absurd pace. They left everyone else in the dust, scaling their strength way faster than normal. Because their guild leader became a player, the Davanin Guild reached the absolute top tier. Shin Juno was a member back then. The guild itself did not care about him. They were not close at all, but they served as the catalyst for his growth. To survive in such a rapidly expanding guild, he had to train like crazy. To keep up, the young man trained relentlessly, and now Shin Juno opens his status. He decides to review his skills, which is incredibly convenient for him, since all of his old combat skills have successfully transferred over. The skill he just used on the golem's corpse did not exist in his past life. No other player has ever mentioned it. Could this be a completely unique ability? It allows him to absorb energy directly from polluted mana inside these dangerous dungeons. Shin Juno realizes he can harness a power source nobody else can touch. But first, he has to tend to the bodies of the fallen players. Surviving this raid came at an incredibly steep, tragic price. Meanwhile, at the Hunter Association headquarters, an employee questions her boss. She asks if they are really going to let Shin Juno go that easily. A small guild raided an unconfirmed dungeon, resulting in a disaster where 4 died. The sole survivor is a rank D support, which makes the whole situation highly suspicious. He just ran away while the others fought, but then he cleaned up the remains and filed a report. By then, the gate had already vanished, making the story impossible to verify. His assistant asks what the boss makes of this. To her, this entire setup feels incredibly sketchy. The chief asks if she honestly believes a D-rank support could destroy those hunters. He points out that this is not some public safety concern anyway, and they should mind their own business, even if something is off. They can never truly prove what happens inside a closed dungeon. All they can do is collect whatever evidence floats up, the assistant objects, arguing that these mysterious incidents are happening way too often lately. Her boss explains that players vanishing after finding unregistered portals is pretty common now. If they actually report these finds to the association, the gates just go up for auction. The original finders only get almost nothing. That is why they risk their lives to clear them in secret. A small guild stands almost zero chance of winning a gate bid, he says. She can look into this survivor herself if she really wants to. Meanwhile, the department head looks over the case file. The player is Shin Juno. The logic behind this entire tragedy just does not fit. The basic facts are clear, but he feels something deeper is going on. Underneath, during the questioning, Shin Juno was far too calm. He has barely ever set foot in dungeons, yet after witnessing absolute slaughter, acting completely unfazed and without fear, his alibi has several holes. But everything somehow checks out. Of course, this could just be personality. The investigator knows something is wrong, but he just can't put his finger on it. Either something major happened, or he simply missed a crucial clue. It is deeply annoying, but there is no use dwelling on it right now. Still, everything must be thoroughly checked going forward. On him, no matter how much Shin Juno racks his brain. Something feels off. He can't recall this gate from his past life at all, yet every single Davin Guild member saw the official bidding form, and it definitely had the official association seal stamped on it. But if the system registered it as unconfirmed, who forged those papers to trick the Davin Guild, or is the association itself rotten to the core? The most worrying part is this isn't just happening to Davin Guild. Mysterious gates and missing teams are very common. Shin Juno lacks the full picture, but he spots a common thread. Among all these guilds, elite players like the formidable leader, Manhwa, and other gifted stars destined to be called legendary heroes are all caught up in this. Someone wants to erase future heroes entirely. Knowing this, he has to keep his true powers completely hidden. Shin Juno is the sole survivor of this cold case, meaning he is a target. Acting suspiciously now would be a massive mistake. He only has about 2 years before the first player selection begins. During this window, he must master and refine his skills. He has to grow strong while staying completely off the grid. This required collecting as many useful skills as possible. Soon, a whole year passed. In a thick, impenetrable forest at the foot of the mountains, our fighter clashed with a savage, aggressive beast. Right in the heat of battle, his trusty blade shattered, snapping completely in two. The young man was struck hard in the chest and flew backward, but managed to stay on his feet by sliding with his broken blade. Yet the beast continued its relentless charge, leaping high into the air to prepare for a deadly strike. His teammates watched on, frozen in absolute horror. The heavily armored, monstrous threat advanced on the defenseless swordsman who was sitting on the ground, desperately backing away from his terrifying opponent. It was a D-rank null, a beast whose raw physical power completely outmatched any ordinary monster. Plus, its thick hide was highly resistant to magical attacks. Our hero realized that an ordinary E-rank dungeon threat would have been frozen by now. Even for a D-rank, this creature was exceptionally deadly. Suddenly, the party tank rushed forward, raising his heavy shield to block the blow. The giant null slammed directly into him. The defender yelled out that they would never survive if they just stayed on the defensive. They absolutely had to strike back. Honestly, this monster was the ultimate nightmare of all low-level hunters. Gnomes earned this terrifying reputation not just for their brute strength. Normally, beasts of this caliber had a fatal vulnerability to magical spells. No matter how weak a group of adventurers was, they could always rely on magic. But this goblin lord was a completely different story. Those cocky hunters, relying on basic spells, felt true terror for the first time. The price of their complacency was total annihilation. The main player realized they had only one fighter capable of dealing physical damage, but he couldn't survive a direct clash and lost his weapon. The desperate swordsman told the tank that his blade was completely gone. How was he supposed to fight now? He realized with deep regret that if he had known things would end this way, he wouldn't have been so greedy. He should have brought a much bigger squad. He never imagined his cheap decision to cut corners would lead to a total wipe. Scanning the chaotic battlefield, he suddenly noticed another member busy with something completely unrelated. It was their low-level porter, who wasn't even attempting to fight the boss. Instead, he was calmly harvesting magic crystals and other drop materials. As long as someone could sense basic mana, they could do this menial job, so the seasoned fighters always treated them like dirt. The leader remembered that he had brought this one guy along just to carry their bags, but now, while everyone was getting slaughtered, this porter was working peacefully, as if nothing was wrong. He apparently possessed basic crafting skills, though no one expected anything from him. The desperate fighter rushed over and frantically asked him if he could forge a new sword. Our quiet porter nodded. The swordsman begged him to make it as durable as possible. The young man apologized, politely reminding him that he was only here as a porter, not support. The fighter snapped that they did not have time To talk, after all, they were dead if they couldn't beat the giant monster. Realizing this, Shin Juno stood up and finally agreed, but set a condition. Once they cleared this place, they had to forget his hidden talent and pay him a much larger cut of loot. Just as support, the swordsman was furious. How could anyone expect decent gear from a failed creator who ended up as a lowly porter? Did this guy seriously think weapons alone were enough to clear the dungeon? The porter just smiled, calling it funny. Without solid weapons, the raid is impossible. Weapons are everything. Shin Juno stepped forward confidently, declaring that his custom gear would easily get them through this dungeon. Meanwhile, at the Overkill Guild, one of the country's top 3 factions, an assistant reported that the president of the Awakened Association had sent an urgent request for backup. The boss asked if this was about the rank error dungeon. The assistant confirmed it. On paper, it was a request, but in reality, they were desperate, no choice at all, with barely anyone capable of entering those forcibly closed gates. The boss looked at a photo, recognizing a face. He stared at one specific young man, a few weeks ago during that incident. In the Siacho district, a dungeon with a rank error had appeared right nearby. The boss had been on site, and this kid was definitely there. The records listed him as a simple porter. Now, rank errors are rare. The odds of these glitched dungeons popping up are incredibly low. You could count the number of survivors from such anomalies on one hand. Yet this same porter had survived twice. That is no mere coincidence. No wonder he was highly suspicious. Glitched dungeons were popping up everywhere lately. Just days ago, a D-rank gate suddenly warped into a lethal B rank. The entire squad inside got wiped out. The association was losing its mind. Public outrage was mounting, and people were pointing fingers at the leadership. After all, measuring and rating these gates was their entire job. The analysts responsible were taking a massive beating, but the boss saw opportunity. Since their guild had top-tier stealth hunters, this could be a goldmine. He decided to take on extra requests and keep a very close eye on things. Next, he asked for an update on his custom weapon request. His assistant replied that they had searched everywhere, but found no A-rank creators. Still, she managed to secure a decent B-rank blade from a Japanese blacksmith. The boss sighed. Anything below a rank shattered the instant he fought. High-tier creators were just too rare. He ordered her to keep looking. He was utterly sick of breaking weapons. Just then, an employee burst in with urgent news. Something major had just gone down at a local gate. Following the association's lead, they had been monitoring a standard D-rank dungeon, where a group of their rookie guild members had been sent to train. Manager T-Hun asked about their ranks. Were they still low-level novices? The employee replied that they were C-rank. T-Hun knew this was serious. He couldn't just ignore his own people. This was a total emergency. He decided to handle this personally. Meanwhile, security barricaded the gate. Crowds of locals gathered around the police line, watching with intense curiosity. Reporters swarmed the scene as the elite Overkill Guild members finally arrived. Pressing forward, the journalists bombarded leader Yun T-Hun with endless questions. Ignoring the cameras, Guild leader T-Hun demanded an immediate status report. His assistant quickly briefed him on what the Vanguard squad had found. The force had 6 hunters, 2 supports, and an assistant. All were highly ranked, yet headcount means absolutely nothing once the dungeon spikes to C rank. T-Hun asked how much time had passed since they entered. A staffer replied it had been roughly 2 hours already. T-Hun promised he would do everything in his power. The association thanked him as T-Hun approached the gate. He brought along a guild staffer named Minhee, a B-rank subspace creator. She also worked as his secretary, capable of generating pockets of space in hidden areas. Right then, his infiltration skill was activated, letting him pierce through mana flows and destroy any obstacles like dungeon gates. Still, this dimensional crossing only applied to himself. Minhee warned T-Hun to stay extremely cautious. Inside, a cold, dark tunnel stretched deep into nothingness. T-Hun frowned. This heat and humidity here were far too high. Why? A rotting stench suggested a massive reptile nested nearby. Yet the floor was clean. Smart monster. Considering the overall dungeon rank, this reptilian beast had to be incredibly old. Even basic lizards here were D-class threats. T-Hun pushed ahead and saw massive piles of slaughtered beasts, hinting at the strength of the squad. Assessing the bloody remains, he immediately understood the state of the team. Ti-hun feared they might already be dead, unable to shake. The dark feeling, yet reaching their location, he saw as shocking. Sight, the missing hunters were still actively fighting the beast. Their archer was firing nonstop, kiting and striking from afar. Ti-hun was surprised. Could they actually handle such strong creatures? Judging by their high speed, the lizards seemed much stronger. The gap was huge. Suddenly, one monster used its unique ability to sneak up on a hunter, raising its jagged weapon. But wait, the blow was suddenly parried by a glowing magic sword. It appeared from nowhere, leaving Ti-hun completely stunned. Was it magic? How did it materialize out of thin air? Then Ti-hun spotted a lone porter. Their eyes locked, and Ti-hun quickly counted heads. He counted exactly 10 people, but distinctly remembered only 9 of them. What was this guy doing? The porter was distracted by Ti-hun. Leaving him open as a beast reared its blade over the hunters. Ti-hun ignored the strange porter and charged forward. Shin Juno did not expect to see their legendary guild leader arriving as their savior. Ti-hun unleashed a high-tier weapon, driving the monster backward. The guild leader waved his hand, yelling for the players to retreat. They thanked him as Ti-hun launched a brutal, relentless assault. Drawing all focus, he systematically hacked the creature to pieces. He barely had to use any strength. Still, this weapon was wearing out fast. Shin Juno asked Ti-hun if this always happened. Whenever he fought, since breaking gear constantly kept them on the edge. Their weapons are practically falling apart, forcing them to fight on a razor edge. The guild. The leader noticed the porter taking way too many risks, so Shin Juno forged a new weapon right there and offered it to the guild leader. Ti-hun was stunned. How could this young porter summon a blade with a single effortless gesture? He had to be a masterclass creator, but why was he registered as just an assistant? Rumors always swirled about cheap mercenary supports, but this made no sense. The porter then laid down a single condition before they moved on. Once this dungeon is cleared, everyone must completely forget about him and his skills. Ti-hun protested. He couldn't just promise that on a whim, but Shin Juno replied that the guild leader was free to break the high-tier weapon instead. Taking the blade, Ti-hun figured it would probably break anyway during combat. Still, having a spare weapon never hurt. He agreed to the silence and charged. Ready to wipe out the remaining monsters, he leaped into the fray. He didn't realize it at first, but a strange power was surging through him. Ti-hun could finally unleash his full combat skills without holding back. In their very first clash, the beast's own weapon shattered instantly. The guild leader froze in shock. He only intended to block the strike. But the enemy's blade shattered first, and this new sword felt incredibly light. Was this porter actually a secret high-tier blacksmith capable of crafting B-rank weapons instantly? With a grin, Ti-hun pressed the attack against the massive lizard. Wait for it, let's see just how long this mysterious blade can actually hold up. His next strike cut deep, delivering a lethal wound straight to the chest. The beast roared in agony as bright flames burst from its flesh. When the monster finally crumbled to dust, the sword remained perfectly intact. The survivors quickly cheered, thanking Ti-hun for keeping them alive. Relieved that everyone was safe, the leader accepted their endless gratitude. The players knew their own gear would have shattered against those beasts. But with that porter's help, they actually made it out alive. Walking over to the quiet young man, Ti-hun asked for his name. The porter chuckled, saying there was no point in knowing a mere assistant's name. But the guild leader insisted they speak as equals and introduced himself first. Finding him sincere, the young man finally introduced himself as Shin Juno. He mentioned he would leave the mana crystals right by the dungeon entrance. The squad commander nodded, fully understanding the quiet arrangement. But Ti-hun had other plans and asked the porter to join him. Shin Juno pointed out his role was just to carry their bags. However, the guild leader argued that this mutated dungeon was completely abnormal. If they didn't take down the boss, nobody was getting out alive. Shin Juno countered that a powerful leader like him could handle it alone. Ti-hun shook his head. His unique skills would destroy any ordinary blade. But the young creator smiled, confident his crafted weapon would never break. In a glitched dungeon with a rank error, anything could happen. Those mutated dungeon monsters were far stronger than normal lizards. If the boss was just as mutated, they had to be extremely careful. Nodding, Shin Juno agreed to accompany the guild leader to the end. They stepped into the boss room, which was wrapped in absolute darkness. Meet the Lizard King. Even with that tiny build, his raw power and speed are completely out of this world. Tahan warns that underestimating this beast is a fatal mistake. Ranks do not mean anything right now, so the guild leader tells his new ally to end this fight as fast as possible. Tahan warns that the sword might snap, but Shin Juno remains completely unfazed. He promises his masterwork will hold. Suddenly, the angry beast lunges forward, targeting the intruders without a single second of hesitation. Now the guild leader stands toe-to-toe with the boss. Both fighters lock eyes, ready to unleash absolute hell. Tahan displays pure mastery with his blade, proving exactly why he runs the entire guild. The giant reptile responds by breathing out a massive torrent of deadly fire. But a glowing, invisible barrier suddenly materializes out of nowhere, absorbing the blazing heat entirely. Stunned, the guild leader asks in shock, "Is not this kid just a weapon creator?" Shin Juno quickly objects. "Is not a shield a weapon? Has Tahan never bashed anyone with one?" The guild leader promises he has a ton of questions once they make it out. The giant beast lashes out with a heavy metal chain to bind Tahan's weapon, trapping his blade tight. Seeing this, Shin Juno yells out the guild leader to fight like a real warrior. Tahan snaps back, reminding him that the porter wanted this weapon tested. Meanwhile, the bleeding boss picks up a spear, targeting the support, who seems completely defenseless. The beast charges forward, thinking the young crafter is completely defenseless. But another invisible barrier instantly blocks the strike. Shin Juno laughs, asking who this monster is trying to fight. After all, he is just a porter. Burning with absolute rage, Tahan sneaks up from behind. Outside the dungeon gate, nervous guards wait alongside a massive crowd of eager reporters. Finally, the heavy doors slide open and the dungeon raid is officially over. Tahan steps out first, followed by his tired party members. Journalists immediately swarm him, shouting questions about the terrifying boss and the status of the team. Even the secretary runs up, deeply concerned about her boss's safety and asking if he is hurt. The rescued hunters express their endless gratitude, knowing they would have died without Tahan's heroic arrival. Meanwhile, Shin Juno quietly tells the squad leader he is leaving. Now that he has received his hard-earned cash, a curious reporter asks how the guild leader conquered the dungeon at such an unbelievable speed. Perhaps the threats inside were just too easy. Tahan looks back at Shin Juno, clarifying that he is not the one who saved the day, but the crowd does not buy it, assuming Tahan single-handedly slaughtered every single monster. The party members even speak up, explaining that their weapons shattered. Mid-fight, they had zero hope until their legendary leader came to the rescue. But Tahan quickly interrupts them, pointing out that those crucial substitute weapons were handcrafted by his young assistant. That is the sole reason they survived. Long enough for him to arrive, the squad commander is completely bewildered. Who is this magical creator? Tahan clarifies that he is talking about their humble porter, who is actually an elite weapons craftsman. The commander admitted there was indeed an assistant who had supported them. But did he actually know how to craft gear? The archer didn't think so. She had absolutely no memory of it. This left the guild leader completely stunned. Had the party seriously not noticed the young man forging their gear? They had no idea what he meant. The helper didn't even own a pickaxe. He had apparently lost it while running around gathering all those crystals. Tahan stood there frozen. How was this possible? They were fighting with those blades. They believed they made those blades themselves. Had they truly forgotten everything? Then the guild leader remembered the condition. Everyone was forced to forget. They couldn't remember the helper or his skills. He realized this was the rent. But how could a mere kid pull off a godly skill reserved only for legendary rank creators? Without warning, Tahan spun around and ran off into the distance. The group watched in total shock. What had gotten into their guild leader? The secretary and the assistant quickly caught up, asking him what was wrong. But Tahan ignored them, desperate to track down the missing porter. He barked an urgent order to Haisu, find that boy immediately. She already knew where Shin Juno was. Today at 1 p.m., he entered a dungeon. He was with 5 other people in the Songpa area. Tahan thanked her quickly. The location wasn't too far, but Secretary Haisu was deeply confused. Why was the boss so obsessed with a simple D-rank creator? Tahan stared at the young man's profile, scanning every single detail. The file clearly stated he was a D-rank creator. it made no sense. Every record showed that Shin Juno was just an ordinary low ranker. Yet the rent requirement on those items told a completely different story. When transferring gear, a creator can demand a custom fee from the user. The sheer complexity of that demand depends entirely on the creator's skill. And this particular setup was absolutely flawless. The execution was unmatched. The guild leader had never witnessed the rent skill used like this before. An ability that could bring endless fortune was used just to hide his face. A blacksmith like him could easily reach the top tier. Let that sink in. Then Tahan remembered that feeling, the freedom to fight without holding back. He had met plenty of famous blacksmiths throughout his long career. But whenever he tested their finest blades, they couldn't handle his power. Under his extreme strength, the metal would heat up and turn red hot. They lost their sharpness. After one intense fight, they would shatter completely. Even the legendary masters felt humiliated by how quickly their weapons broke. They simply couldn't meet his standard. He could never find a worthy blade. But the weapons forged by this mysterious kid defied all common logic. Gear created by this young man had no limits, ignoring all normal rules. Tahan realized that if Shin Juno was truly capable of doing this, he could fashion something completely impossible with normal smithing skills. Normally, a 5-man party takes about 4 hours to clear a D-rank dungeon. Since only 1 hour had passed, he knew he had to move fast. He asked Haisu to check his schedule and clear everything for today. She mentioned a 7 p.m. meeting, but Tahan ordered her to cancel it. After leaving work early, Tahan headed straight to the active raid gate. Another massive boss had just been completely defeated in a fierce battle with players. Just as expected, the creature was entirely destroyed. Could a high-quality weapon like this really have been crafted by an assistant? It easily shattered the boss's sword, saving the desperate knight. Who could have ever guessed that a mere support helper possessed such a highly valuable skill? He had never seen blades of this quality in his life. The knight thanked the creator from the absolute bottom of his heart for this masterpiece. The players immediately decided to recruit him into their guild. The knight argued that such incredible talent should never be restricted to just being a support. Meanwhile, Shin Juno realized he had spent far too much mana. He really did not expect to run into a team struggling with normal gates. Had he saved his energy, everything would be different. The immense pool of mana he felt after destroying the golem had not recovered. He had burned through it all, and it was taking forever to restore. Right now, his maximum reserves were no better than a standard D-rank hunter. Still, it was enough to forge some basic gear. Luckily, his detailed memories from his past life turned out to be incredibly useful here. For a creator, the primary skill is item crafting. Normally, the grade of the item scales directly with the amount of mana spent. But get this, there is a secret hack nobody else knows yet. It all depends on your actual level of understanding of the item you create. The higher your understanding, the better the final quality. And as quality rises, your overall consumption of precious mana becomes way more efficient than before. With identical costs, results vary based on comprehension. Once Shin Juno realized this, he immediately began undergoing some rigorous training. He visited busy workshops to learn weapon forging. However, the results of his current craft completely shattered his expectations. For the mana spent, quality increased dramatically. Unfortunately, balancing his crafting fees and basic living costs simultaneously was extremely difficult. Since professional mana gear is incredibly expensive, buying it anytime soon is totally out. Shin Juno figured he could at least buy standard mana potions. These were the only useful items currently produced on a large industrial scale. But with his current meager salary, the young man knew it was an impossible expense. No major guild wanted to hire a weak D-rank creator for support. He had no other choice but to find a different path. Standard dungeon run only gave him a miserable 1% increase in mana. That was way too inefficient. Now, what was his next move? He had to find an abnormal dungeon to absorb massive energy all at once. The absorption rate there was at least 10 times faster than normal. Unfortunately, there was absolutely no way to predict the actual danger level beforehand. In his previous life, he would have easily died without his strong guild leader. But right now, he was about to face a dangerous C-rank boss. He needed to prepare meticulously if he wanted to survive this upcoming clash. For a weak D rank, his growth depended entirely on the rewards from this battle. After absorbing the residual mana and clearing the gate, the leader thanks the crew. The hunters exchange quick goodbyes, cheerfully planning to meet up for another run very soon. Shin Juno smiles. Everything went perfectly this time too, or did it? Gone, wiped clean just like they should be, until a voice calls out. He turns around and spots the Overkill Guild master, Tahan, and his secretary. Tahan approaches, asking with a smile if the kid remembers him. Shin Juno panics internally. Did his memory wipe skill actually fail on this guy? Playing dumb, Shin Juno claims he has absolutely no clue who they are. Tahan just chuckles in disbelief, offering the young hunter his official business card. The Powerhouse Guild leader explains that they have some very important matters to discuss. This is Overkill, one of the premier guilds in the entire country. Shin Juno knows it is way too early to join a powerhouse like this. He needs to decline. Politely excusing himself, Shin Juno claims he is busy with a pressing dinner appointment. But Tahan smiles, insisting the young man will not regret giving him a moment. It will be quick and dinner is on the guild. Shin Juno can only sigh. He notes that a busy top leader sure has time for a lowly D-rank assistant. Shin Juno needs to test how much this guy actually remembers of the rental. So he accepts and they head to a high-class restaurant to talk. Once seated, Shin Juno gets straight to business. Why would a top guild leader seek out a simple D-rank support hunter? It is not a casual chat, and Tahan reveals he is a berserker. Shin Juno likely guessed as much, given the man's wild, destructive aura. With immense physical power, he desperately needs weapons that can actually handle it. The ultimate goal for any berserker is securing a master blacksmith as a supplier. Tahan admits he has searched far and wide for the perfect weapon maker. He traveled across the globe, meeting with the most legendary masters alive. Spending millions without a second thought, ordering any sword that showed promise. Yet absolutely nothing could survive his overwhelming, raw strength on the battlefield. Until now, because one weapon survived, a sword crafted by Shin Juno. Just like that, Shin Juno realizes his memory-erasing rental penalty totally failed. It turns out berserkers possess a rare passive skill that resets status debuffs. Shin Juno makes a mental note to stay extremely cautious around elite rankers. Cutting right to the chase, Tahan formally asks the young man to join. He already knows Shin Juno is currently unaffiliated and operates entirely solo. If he accepts, Overkill is ready to roll out the red carpet. He drops a massive contract offer 10 billion coins, starting immediately. That is on top of full expense coverage and generous annual dividends. Plus a guaranteed 10% salary bump with every single yearly renewal. Shin Juno does not even hesitate, standing straight up from his seat immediately. He flatly declines, stating he has zero interest in joining any guild right now. Stating that their business is concluded, the young creator prepares to leave. He politely thanks them for dinner, leaving the secretary in complete shock. She cannot comprehend why her formidable boss offered such an insanely generous contract. Tahan just smiles, telling her she clearly does not understand a true warrior. It has been years since the perfect sword resonated with his battle-worn fingers. With such a weapon, he could go all out and it would survive everything, the guild. Leader explained it was not just about some feeling. He asked if she even knew how. Many high-level weapons he had shattered over the past year. His secretary knew that. The master's spending on weapons was astronomical because they simply could not withstand his raw power. With lower-grade weapons, the master could not even activate his actual skills. He noted that if a weapon that durable truly existed, then the massive contract would be fully worth it, but the catch was that absolutely no one was capable of making something like that, not even the top blacksmiths. Yet Tihian insisted. The young man possessed that exact ability. That was why he wanted to recruit him. At all costs, think about it, our main character just turned down an offer from one of the 3 strongest guilds in the country. He never imagined a day like this would ever come. While the Overkill Guild and Tihian would be incredibly useful, it was still way too early to make that move. Shin Juno decided he was fine with it. He just had to wait patiently. The master would definitely seek him out again, but next. There did not seem to be a single living soul left in the dark dungeon. Almost every monster in the massive chamber had been completely wiped out. A knight holding a sword could not understand who was standing against him. His opponent grinned, saying he would remember this fight for a long time. Usually, challengers would be crying and begging for mercy before passing out. This rival, with the massive blade, was genuinely puzzled. Was this guy really destined to become a hero? The knight demanded to know why the man had attacked. Then was it just to steal all the loot? The villain laughed, saying his reasons were much more interesting, but he had no plan to explain it to someone who would be dead within minutes. Smirking, he told the knight to bring his best shot. Since he had no other options left, the knight realized this was no ordinary foe. Still, at this range, he had zero options. He launched forward to strike, knowing he might not survive, but the villain easily knocked the weapon right out of his hands, leaving him completely defenseless. Suddenly, a flash of light erupted between them. Both recoiled in confusion, caught in the massive shockwave. The villain was blown back but quickly recovered his footing. Meanwhile, the disarmed knight collapsed to his knees. The villain shook his head, disappointed. He only signed up because this was supposed to be the first heroic level raid in a whole year. Who would have thought this knight would turn out to be such a pathetic weakling? Still, the guy's raw courage was commendable, but in the end he still begged for mercy. The villain raised his massive blade and swung. Just like that, the knight was destroyed. The villain muttered in disappointment, having hoped for a decent challenge. This was not even enough to warm him up, but don't worry, the official report would note his brave fight against the boss and his heroic death. This was normal for anomalous dungeons. The killer snapped a quick photo, pleased that his collection was expanding. After all, this was what he lived for. But then, a sudden, chilling sensation washed over him. The villain realized he could barely handle this overwhelming pressure. Whoever had this aura needed to mask it, or at least warn him first. The priestess quickly apologized. She admitted she was in a rush, hoping to find some rare materials here. The villain scoffed, telling her there were no valuable ingredients left. To the young executioner, both the players and the beasts were utterly hopeless. He muttered that they should have just waited, instead of listening to that guy. Hearing this, the priestess was shocked. Would he really defy that man? Defying him was exactly what the executioner had in mind, anyway. But first, the priestess had to clear out this entire battlefield. She smiled and told him not to worry, since this was her specialty. The executioner reminded her to keep her promise and let him fight S-rank hunters. After all, that was the sole reason he was even cooperating with her. Under these conditions, he had to eliminate his targets with extreme caution. He couldn't unleash his full power here. Meanwhile, she wondered who was next. But once the monster finally appeared, she realized he hadn't been lying. Embrace yourself, because massive crowds were still gathering right outside the gate. Thankfully, the security guards on duty kept everyone safely back. Spotting our hero, a masked young man waved. He was finally here. Shin Juno asked what he was doing here, immediately recognizing that giant scabbard. The masked man laughed, asking what a mere support was doing there. He explained that he had to step in and enter the gate. The guild member who was originally assigned to the raid had suddenly fallen ill. The guy caught a virus, so they sent him as a last-minute replacement. Shin Juno didn't buy that excuse for a second. Right then, they were called inside. Our protagonist knew this guy would reach out, just not this soon. With plans disrupted, Shin Juno realized he would have to adjust his strategy. The entire squad stepped straight through the gate and entered the dark dungeon. Keeping watch at the very back, Shin Juno heard the masked player ask a question. He wondered why he didn't join. Shin Juno flatly refused to talk about it. Ahead of them, the other hunters gossiped about the morning's C-rank gate auction. The Henu Guild had swept in and won it with a massive bid. Nobody else stood a chance. Shin Juno wondered what they were really after. They bought up those gates, and honestly, wait until you hear what they found. The squad commander chimed in, saying a support could easily access high-tier gates. Just having their guild's name on his license would grant massive privileges. To any awakened, a top-tier guild's reputation is absolutely everything. It brings instant respect, envy, and easy access to the best raids. Not to mention, the rewards and payouts are on a whole different level. Endless opportunities open up, including tickets to the exclusive high-rank auctions. In this world, political standing is just as crucial as raw talent. Everything is rigged, so the biggest guilds hoard all the best treasures. A hunter needs to aim high, just like the ambitious Shin Juno. He had to strive for a real goal, much like any elite awakened. The squad commander kept pushing his pitch, explaining the easy path. With the Overkill Guild backing him, achieving his goals would be incredibly simple. He still couldn't understand why Shin Juno stubbornly kept refusing their offers. Shin Juno cold-shouldered him, telling him to mind his own business. Still, the commander could understand why a strong guy might be stubborn. But our hero made it crystal clear he was never joining any guild. Not at all, the squad leader stood completely puzzled, wondering if this was trauma from the recent downfall of the Devon Guild. Either way, they had to move forward. With no other choice, the squad pushed deeper into the dark dungeon to investigate. Their mage took the lead, casting a soft light from his staff as thick masses of sticky cobwebs began brushing against their heads. It was a clear sign. They had officially stepped into monster territory, a nesting ground for legion spiders. Fighting just one of these beasts is easy enough, but they have a nasty habit. They always hunt in massive packs, and early scouts reported around 50 of them nesting nearby. That sounded manageable, except their venom causes paralysis. One single bite means game over. The leader slowly unsheathed his steel sword and warned the team to brace themselves. The monsters were coming right now. They had to stick tight. Shin Juno calmly told the leader not to worry. His only job was focusing on the incoming fight. Still, the leader barked out a firm order for the frontliners to shield their support class at all costs. That was the golden rule of hunting. Suddenly, rustling echoed from the shadows, and the terrifying swarm finally emerged, giant legion spiders. The swordsman urged everyone to keep cool heads. They could win this. As long as they stayed focused, the spiders lunged forward in a wave. But the hunters held their ground. Our protagonist watched the clash play out. Noting their performance was actually pretty decent for a D-rank team, there was no need to worry. But then more and more spiders poured in. Honestly, this is looking pretty bad. There were way more than just dozens of beasts. The leader swung his blade, aiming directly at the nearest creeping threat he knew very well. These legion spiders were bottom-tier trash. He did not even need to use his steel edge. Just a quick burst of concentrated Kai would do. He expected to finish this raid without even scratching his weapon. But the numbers kept swelling, forcing the players to form a tight circle. The walls of beasts pushed in, closing their defensive ring. The tank gasped. Because the swarm was not thinning at all, there were easily over 100. Their intel was completely wrong. The mage panted, his mana pools running dry. The swordsman grimaced, realizing they were in a seriously bad spot now. The leader shifted back, urging Shin Juno to stay behind him, but our hero simply replied he had some business to finish. He is seriously going in alone, guys. Marching right into the thick of the swarm, the leader screamed at him to get down. If he released his Kai, this kid would get vaporized. Instead, Shin Juno unleashed his hypnotic gaze. Thin glowing threads began wrapping around the entire crawling mass of beasts. The nearest spider was sliced instantly, spraying thick green blood everywhere as its shattered carcass collapsed. The beast fell right at his feet. Shin Juno calmly calculated his options, realizing a blade would be the fastest way to clear this dungeon. In fact, summoning multiple swords and raining them down would be ideal. But his current mana pool was just too low for that level of destruction. So he adapted, focusing his remaining energy on crafting one single, perfect magic sword. The spectral blade tore through the air, darting from target to target and tearing the entire spider horde to pieces. The cave fell completely silent. The battlefield was finally cleared. Spinning wildly, the massive blade sliced through giant spider, sticking deep into the earth right beside them. The leader assumed it was a high-tier mass attack, but that casting time usually takes 10 full seconds. Meanwhile, their support class easily handled dozens of beasts. Did he materialize weapons? Absolutely bizarre, since when could a support class fight at such a crazy level? Shin Juno asked the squad commander why he was just standing there doing nothing. Didn't he want to help? Meanwhile, the squad kept desperately holding off the spiders. As the beasts pressed them hard, the leader shouted they would talk later. He charged forward to clear the remaining monsters, while Shin Juno calmly pointed to the dead spiders and warned the commander to claim the kill for himself. No way, nobody would ever believe a mere porter could wipe them out. When the fight ended, the knight praised the commander for an incredible victory. But then he noticed something familiar about the mysterious masked player. Who could have guessed this undercover fighter was actually the head of the prestigious Overkill Guild? The leader apologized for the disguise, explaining his secret recon mission. The starstruck team expressed their gratitude, fully convinced they survived only because of his legendary strength. He had single-handedly annihilated every single threat. Just then Shin Juno casually strolled back to the group, announcing his return. He and his partner apologized for the long delay spent harvesting materials. Holding up a glowing lantern, the other player reported they had searched the immediate area and found zero enemies, but a hidden doorway lay ahead. This dark corridor looked completely unexplored, offering them an open path forward. However, the knight strongly advised against it. They needed to pull back. The support mage was shocked. Why retreat when they were almost done? The knight explained that the abnormal density of these lethal spiders and the unstable dungeon layout were completely different from their official recon data. After all, these portals belonged to alien realms beyond human comprehension. They contained ancient geometry and hostile species never seen on Earth. This entire world of dungeons and system-born hunters is still relatively new. At first, the primary objective of rookie hunters was strictly collecting data. Very few rookies could easily adapt to a completely foreign environment, and entering blind usually resulted in a failed raid or brutal death. That constant danger birthed an indispensable vanguard role, the scout. Hunters specialized in concealment or tracking joined forces to map the areas. Because of their crucial intel, the overall success rate of raids spiked massively, establishing these pathfinders as essential team members. The knight emphasized that their scout reports were usually highly precise. Averaging 98% accuracy, he didn't think this was a mistake. Yet the player argued that having the Overkill guild leader changed everything. The knight understood his eagerness, but relying on outside help once was already dangerous enough. One wrong move would get everyone killed. Still, the player stubbornly insisted that he had highly personal reasons to finish this raid. Even the mage agreed, making the knight ask if those reasons were more important than their lives. Once they entered the boss room, there was no turning back, and he refused to die inside. They wanted to fight, but they needed to retreat and report everything to the association. Their support was completely fine with proceeding, which caught the knight off guard. The guild leader added that even though he was here on personal business, he was still part of the team and would gladly assist their investigation. He had no reason to hold back. Taihun then mentioned he still needed to inspect the boss room. The knight bowed deeply in gratitude. He asked him to protect the squad, but the guild leader told the knight not to worry and to keep leading the squad himself. Nodding, the knight declared they would continue pressing deeper into the cave. With their new route approved, the squad soon approached a massive gate. Behind those doors lay the boss room, and the knight began his briefing. He reminded everyone that this area was ruled by the Queen of Legion. Spiders, a D+ rank threat whose raw combat power is actually quite low. She is usually an easy target who mostly just breeds spider legionnaires. That was the official report, but they had no idea what actually waited for them behind those massive doors. They slowly pushed them open. They walked down a long, dark corridor, but Taihun felt no danger. Even so, the knight ordered the entire squad to stay on high alert. They gripped their weapons tightly as spiders crawled along the high ceiling. The boss lurked among them. One hunter asked if that was the queen. It seemed like a relief that the monster matched their intelligence reports. The mage stepped forward to strike first, but the spider stood completely still. The queen did not move. The knight wondered if she was already dead, which seemed highly unlikely. Cautiously, the knight ordered a retreat just as a massive beast emerged. A towering arachnid materialized right above the motionless decoy spider. This cunning queen ruled over all spider monsters with sheer intelligence. She expanded her massive legion by conquering rival spider territories. She shared her power with subordinates as Taihun bravely stepped forward. He launched a direct attack, shocked to find such a threat here. Encountering a B-rank monster was bad news. Taihun knew he needed precision. A weak blow wouldn't even scratch it. He needed one devastating strike. But before he could, his sword completely shattered. Taihun realized his weapon broke before he could even land a hit. With the sword gone, our hero stepped in, urging Taihun to wait. He told him to rest because a proper weapon was already being prepared. Suddenly, the main character realized something that caught him off guard. Had he truly run out of mana after fighting for so long? It was a miracle he survived this long. He quickly pulled out a potion. He knew he could only drink 1 mana potion per day. Any more could cause severe addiction, but he drank it anyway. The effects kicked in immediately as Shin Juno analyzed the situation. This arachnid was a B-rank boss instead of the expected C-rank queen. A massive error had occurred, but the players knew one thing. Having the powerful guild leader Taihun around was their only saving grace. It was going to be nearly impossible for their squad to handle this giant arachnid on their own. But as soon as the danger level climbed past rank B, the entire dungeon shifted. Shin Juno sized up the monster, realizing its raw power was off the charts. It easily outclassed 5 rank hunters, meaning they could not rely solely on Taihun. Shin Juno ordered the resting players to stand up and prepare for the boss fight. As Arachne switched targets, the stunned knight demanded to know who Shin Juno really was. Why was such a high-tier awakened warrior acting as a lowly assistant for their team? Did Taihun recruit him? Shin Juno replied that they had to focus on surviving first. There was a major decision to make as glowing new weapons materialized before them. Shin Juno told them they could take these blades and slaughter the spider swarm. Or they could easily run away and wait outside until the danger was handled. Shin Juno was completely confident that the squad would make the right decision here. Grasping his newly crafted blade, the swordsman gasped at its sheer, unbelievable power. He had never held anything like it, feeling like he could slice through steel. Slaying these beasts was now as easy as cutting paper with a razor-sharp edge. Nearby, the lightning mage charged up her spells, crackling with intense, destructive energy. She declared that the boss stood no chance, leaving the knight completely shell-shocked. Not only were the weapons upgraded, but their skill damage had multiplied tenfold. The knight wondered if a mere support class could really forge gear this legendary. Meanwhile, Taihun stared at the boss, knowing that stalling would be incredibly difficult. This was exactly what he expected from a terrifying rank B dungeon boss. Yet his weapon remained completely intact, performing far better than he had hoped. Suddenly, the mage gasped as a massive wave of spiders crawled into view. They seemed to be multiplying by the second. Can they even stop this nightmare? The knight realized they were targeting Taihun, who quickly shouted a warning. He ordered everyone to fall back as the battlefield grew incredibly dangerous. Arachne unleashed a skill, sacrificing her minions to heal her wounds. Taihun knew she would keep healing unless they wiped out every spider. To stop this endless healing, they had to boost their raw firepower. They needed massive burst damage to finish this creature in a single strike. Shin Juno noted that even a mana blade could not withstand Taihun's raw force. So Shin Juno decided to offer the guild leader a brand new weapon. He handed over a massive two-handed sword, his ultimate and most powerful creation. As soon as Taihun gripped the massive hilt, he felt its incredible power. With this blade in hand, he knew he could obliterate anything in sight. Though unfamiliar with greatswords, Taihun instantly felt that it suited him perfectly. He swung the massive weapon, and the resulting blast is absolutely mind-blowing. It was a fundamental berserker skill, but he was finally executing it properly. This was the first time Taihun had used the ability correctly. Normally, this skill drives the user wild, trading sanity for absolute, crushing power. Few could survive the intense feedback if their weapon shattered under the pressure. Taihun grinned at the devastating impact, refusing to let up his relentless assault. Unleashing his full power, he made sure the monster felt absolute, pure terror. Taihun knew this state was highly dangerous, pushing his own limits to the edge. Keeping control of his mind was key, as this was only his second time trying. Since his awakening, things changed. He pushed his skill to the absolute limit. Yun Taihun realized he was dead wrong. This support was not normal. Once his true abilities come to light, the entire world will watch. The leader stood there, staring at the defeated boss monster. An insane amount of mana began radiating out, completely eclipsing any normal boss. Shin Juno asked if the guild leader felt anything strange from this monster. Yun Taihun confirmed the queen was definitely dead, and her remains completely destroyed. Shin Juno realized that even high-ranking hunters could not sense this lingering mana. Right then, his passive skill, mana absorption, instantly kicked into gear. This skill allowed him to draw energy directly from infected mana inside dungeons. Suddenly, he unlocked a brand new skill called demon weapon production. Shin Juno could not even begin to imagine what kind of weapon he would make. He knew little about the demon world, but everyone feared its reputation. Honestly, Shin Juno was disappointed. The reward had nothing to do with mana. Still, thanks to Arachne, he had already gathered half of the required mana. Yun Taihun turned to him, clearly having something important to say. Even though the support had refused, the leader still wanted him in his guild. Knowing he was being pushy, Yun Tae-hun bowed his head to apologize. The knight froze. Was a famous guild leader actually bowing down? He was actually showing deep respect to a mere D-rank assistant. This guy was clearly no ordinary player, possessing some incredible hidden talent. The swordsman reported to his commander that the area was fully cleared out. The mage guessed the massive arachnid had already devoured every monster in here. Meanwhile, the swordsman could not stop praising his incredible new weapon. He could slice through monsters effortlessly without wasting a single drop of energy. The mage had never even heard of a smith capable of crafting such things. Could this kid really be connected to the powerful Overkill Guild? The knight ordered the group to contact the Hunter Association right away. Their squad leader agreed, wanting to leave this creepy place as soon as possible. The knight realized that even if this assistant had ties to a massive guild, it was much safer for them to just pack up and get out of there. Interfering with the business of a top-tier guild would only bring trouble. No matter the emergency, giant guilds rarely showed off their true power so openly. They valued secrecy far too much to let their secrets slip. Shin Juno agreed to chat, noting that a powerful leader should never bow to strangers. Yun Tae-hun assured him that his guild would not press him anymore. But make no mistake, they were not giving up on him. Yun Tae-hun extended his hand, offering a contract with highly favorable terms. Later, inside a quiet office, a young woman greeted him with a warm smile. Introducing herself as Min Hisu, she expressed how glad she was to see him. As the secretary to the Overkill Guild leader, she was handling his contract today. Shin Juno thanked her, surprised they reached out to him so quickly. He did not expect them to arrange a meeting by the very next morning. She explained that their leader had ordered everything to be prepared immediately. Min Hisu watched him closely, noticing something unusual. They are now sitting in a private reception room with extremely tight security. No one could eavesdrop here. Hisu politely suggests they look over the contract, which contains the same exact terms discussed down in the dungeon basement. She explains that while edits take time, Shin Juno can modify the details. He realizes the terms are exactly what the guild leader promised him earlier. Seeing the promise in writing finally makes the whole situation feel real. He pushes the papers aside and says he has absolutely no questions about it. Flashback to the dungeon, where Yoon Tae-hyun realized why the helper refused. Tae-hyun guessed that the young man was hiding his true identity for reasons. If that was true, then this secret proposal would actually protect both of them. Overkill could quietly supply Shin Juno with whatever resources he needs. High-grade gear, rare ingredients, exclusive gate access, anything he wants. But for legality, they still need a formal contract to deliver things covertly. Hearing this, Shin Juno is stunned by how incredibly generous they are. Why such favor? Tae-hyun grins. Of course, this deal has a catch. The kid will occasionally need to handle direct missions for the leader. But there is no pressure. If Juno dislikes a task, he can freely refuse it. Juno wonders what happens if he just takes their support without doing anything. Tae-hyun chuckles and says that is totally fine because there is a bigger goal. They want to lock down his loyalty and keep rival guilds from grabbing him. Taking their resources is simply a way to build trust between them. Suddenly, black-suited agents from the Hunter Association arrive in the dungeon. They announce themselves as the official reconnaissance team for the association. Seeing them, Tae-hyun knows it is time to leave and wraps up the talk. He tells the helper he will be waiting for a positive answer outside. Deep down, Tae-hyun knows securing this guy is their ultimate jackpot. Meanwhile, Junso's plan is working out perfectly, a classic win-win situation. He wanted to impress Tae-hyun without tying himself down to the guild. Now he gets all the perks of partnership with zero chains. He signs the contract right then and asks when his support begins. She answers that everything starts today, so he can order right away. Hisu then mentions that the leader prepared a very special signing bonus. It is a rare commemorative gift, straight from the guild master's private vault. She explains he recovered something extremely valuable from the boss spider room. Juno thanks her and hands over a shopping list of necessary items. Looking over the request, she says she can source everything in 1 week. But she hesitates, pointing out that these cheap materials look pretty useless. He smiles, cryptically replying that he has no intention of using them anyway. Later, Juno waits patiently in the lobby for a specific target to arrive. There she is, Hanjia, the future legendary A-rank ranger. After the system unlocks, everyone will know her as the goddess archer. For now, she is just a timid girl, nervously approaching the reception desk. She shyly asks for a training pass, handing over her official identification card. The staff member gasps, realizing they are looking at an A-rank hunter. But while they offer her a tough C-rank gate, she insists on a D-rank instead. Hanxia had recently been promoted to A-rank, but she still had almost no experience, having only entered a gate a few times while Shin Juno watched. He had seen low-rank players quit, but never an A-rank hunter. Shin Juno did not know why, but he assumed she would soon rise higher. While he wondered, Hanxia quietly signed her registration papers. Initial ranks are based on mana, which poured in when the blue energy first surged through the cracks, though everyone absorbed it completely. Different amount, the more energy a body stores, the stronger their skills. Because of this, the association had to measure everyone's mana capacity. Anyone who absorbed more than a baseline amount was labeled awakened. From there, they were divided into different ranks based on their capacity. Of course, these ranks were never fixed, and even with a low rank, you can still clear dungeon raids and try to make a name for yourself. A good reputation brings promotion, but the opposite can also happen. Hanxia handed her papers back, confirming she had filled everything out. The assistant checked the sheets and asked if she had a partner. Hanxia admitted she worked alone, so the secretary offered a partner list. Rules required teams of 2, and since there were no open requests for D-rank gates right now, she would have to wait a bit. The clerk assumed that Hanxia lacked the authorization to run solo raids. Otherwise, she would not be here, since solo clearance required a test. With the test option ready, the information desk clerk offered a quick reminder. Hanxia was warned that her A-rank would be updated in a month. To keep it, she needed to clear dungeons at C-rank or higher. Otherwise, she would have to take the official A-rank test to keep her title. The clerk thought the exam suited her best, promising an invite soon. Shin Juno watched from a distance as Hanxia finally walked away. She realized that even getting a training gate was way too difficult. She really should have submitted an online request instead of coming here. Coming to this chaotic, crowded lobby was honestly a massive mistake. She just wanted to avoid being looked down on, so she breathed deeply. If she could secure a D-rank gate, things would definitely look up. She could not rush, checking her phone to see if the invite arrived. And there it was, a D-rank gate, exactly as she had hoped. Since she wanted to go solo anyway, she quickly accepted the offer. Soon she arrived at the urban gate, heavily cordoned off by guards. Putting her combat gear on felt incredibly strange after such a long break. A young man suddenly approached her, asking if she was Hunter Hanxia. He introduced himself as Shin Juno, her assigned support player for the raid. He offered a polite greeting, hoping they would make a great team. She bowed, introducing herself, while Shin Juno apologized for his slight delay. He suggested they head in, and she confirmed the entry request was ready. Shin Juno studied her, remembering she was a ranger who started at A-rank. But after repeatedly failing her evaluations, her standing had completely tanked. She was demoted to C-rank, yet she still held onto her gear. She eventually earned the title of Goddess Archer after discovering her massive latent talent. Shin Juno knew exactly what kind of talent she possessed, the rare sort. That can awaken even without player status. Today, he wanted to unleash it. Deep in a wooded mountain area, a squad of heavily armed monsters was moving. They patrolled their usual route while Hanxia watched them, hidden in the bushes. As the squad passed, she realized these were indeed highly dangerous, real monsters. She was incredibly glad she had bought the proper high-tier gear beforehand. On her left wrist, she wore a specialized device that captured monster mana. Hanxia apologized to her companion, asking if she could go ahead and handle this alone. Shin Juno simply nodded, letting her take the lead without a single worry. He promised to step in if she got overwhelmed, at the very least. He could still craft more arrows for her. Hanxia aimed her bow. Her shot narrowly missed, but a massive explosion blasted right beside the beasts. They scattered in absolute panic. Shin Juno had never seen her fight before. But her sheer raw destructive power easily surpassed most high-ranking hunters. Honestly, all that raw, devastating firepower is completely useless if she can't even aim. Only one of her 3 arrows actually hit, which was a record for her. Still, Hanxia calculated she could take down at least 4 more. She decided to end this with 2 final shots and aimed once more. Suddenly, a monster blew an alarm horn. Hanshia froze in surprise. Vicious beasts began swarming from all directions. She kept desperately firing. Arrows flew, but Hanshia soon realized she was completely surrounded. With only a few arrows left, she couldn't decide where to shoot. The monsters sensed her hesitation and immediately closed in for the kill. Suddenly, a hail of magical glowing swords rained down from the heavens. They slammed into the dirt, shielding her. Shin Juno yelled for her help. She blinked in shock. Didn't he say he was just a low-rank creator? Shin Juno warned that his sword barrier wouldn't hold, so he needed her now. Hanshia frantically asked what to do as he pointed ahead. He ordered her to shoot in that exact direction with absolute full power. Though she had no idea what he planned, she promised to give it everything. Her powerful arrows tore deep into the forest, obliterating everything in sight. Hanshia panted, asking what's next. Shin Juno smiled. She had cleared their path. They needed to move fast. He grabbed her hand and pulled her along. They bolted down the newly cleared path, with monsters hot on their heels. They didn't stop until they reached a dark cave entrance in the rocks. Hanshia finally let out a ragged breath, whispering that they had survived. She looked back, still sensing the monsters nearby, though they couldn't reach them. But wait, why was Shin Juno acting so incredibly calm right now? She shook the thought off, knowing they had to leave as soon as possible. Hanshia declared she was officially calling it a day. She promised to pay him the full compensation they had agreed on. But Shin Juno shook his head, telling her they couldn't leave just yet. The riled-up monsters were still patrolling outside, making it far too risky. Shin Juno pointed deeper into the cave, suggesting they wait it out. They had lost their signal flare during the escape, leaving them completely stranded. Their only choice was to wait out the goblins. Hanshia anxiously asked when they could finally leave. Shin Juno replied it could take at least half a day. Maybe even longer. Hanshia clutched her head in pure, absolute panic. Half a day, a total lie. He knew the monsters would leave in 30 minutes. Too short, but Hanshia was terrified enough to believe anything right now. The truth was, he desperately needed to get Hanshia inside that dark cave. But she was currently frozen in place, stubbornly refusing to take another step. She kept crying, deeply convinced that this whole mess was entirely her fault. If only she actually knew how to fight, things would be completely different. She apologized tearfully, saying she should have just entered this dungeon all by herself. Useless again, she felt like an absolute burden to everyone. Just like in her past raids, she was only holding others back. A simple favor, that was all he asked from her to make things right. She needed to pull herself together. Besides, they had plenty of time to talk. They finally walked into the shadows. Hanshia quietly asked why he wanted her help. Despite her higher rank status, she had almost no real field experience. She honestly had no clue what her support partner wanted from her. Shin Juno recalled her warning. This was her first time inside a training gate. It made sense. She simply lacked the basic practical dungeon details. No boss here. Instead, this cave held a different secret. An elite monster lurked inside this cave, just 1 tier below boss level. Shin Juno confessed his personal drive. He desperately needed to hunt down this beast. But because of his weak support role, other teams always rejected him. He added that Hanshia was the very first person to welcome him. Though it sounded strange, she smiled and promised to back him up. She wanted to help. After all, he was the one who saved her. She understood perfectly well how painful it was to be rejected by a team. Suddenly, the glow of the sensor on her wrist flared to life, warning them. The elite target, a massive, heavily armed creature, emerged from darkness. Hanshia ordered him to stand back as she drew her bow. It was only a D-rank creature. Surely one clean shot would shatter it completely. Her release was perfect. She was already celebrating a quick, effortless victory. A total fail. The arrow bounced harmlessly off its hard hide. A massive mistake. Now she had to pull back with everything she had. She took aim again, knowing she had to fire before it reached her. 0 time left. Shin Juno immediately leaped forward to shield her. He shoved her aside, throwing himself right in front of the beast. A close call. Shin Juno narrowly dodged while Hanshia watched, completely paralyzed. Watching her partner fight, she was suddenly dragged back to her old trauma. During a past raid, her former teammates had screamed in her face. They mocked her terrible shooting, blaming her for nearly hitting them. They demanded payback, but Hanshia tried to explain she didn't mean to. She argued her aim was far from them, but they cut her off. No apologies, just pathetic excuses from a totally useless hunter. Hania remembered how other raid teams rejected her. Even as an A-rank hunter, nobody wanted her. Everyone avoided her, but if she truly was this useless, why did she keep holding on to her license? Looking back, Hania regretted everything. She should have just walked away. Her own weakness put Shin Juno in danger, absolute danger. The massive beast lunges. Hania freezes under its terrifying shadow. Shin Juno grabs her shoulder. He tells her she must listen carefully. If she can just stay calm and follow his lead, they can actually beat this thing. He has a secret trap ready, perfect for emergencies. His trump card is fully prepared, but he needs to stall for a few more seconds. He shouts at her to focus, to look closely at the beast and find its weak spot. Suddenly, Hania feels a strange, electric shock wash over her. Shin Juno urges her on, telling her to loose an arrow right at that target. Her vision sharpens. She locks onto the monster's glowing core. She knows she only has one shot, one chance to end this nightmare forever. Hania lets the arrow fly. Shin Juno smiles, knowing his setup worked perfectly. He pulled it off despite the ridiculously strict conditions. The arrow strikes dead center, triggering a massive explosion of light. With a deafening screech of agony, the beast takes massive damage to its armor. Shin Juno warns Hania that this sudden sensory overload is going to feel pretty overwhelming. It is a dangerous gamble, forcing someone's perception past its natural limits. But Shin Juno knew it was the only way to awaken Hania's true potential. Gasping for breath, Hania looks at him and asks who he really is. How could a mere assistant predict all of this, and what does awakening even mean? Shin Juno just smiles, telling her to relax, since they have all the time in the world. Hania scowls, demanding he stop dodging the question and give her a straight answer. But her vision blurs, and her knees suddenly buckle under the extreme strain. Shin Juno catches her, slinging the unconscious archer over his back with a quiet sigh. Making friends is tough, but at least they survived this insane dungeon raid. When Hania finally wakes up outside, she immediately apologizes for her rude behavior. She admits she felt completely out of control, like she wasn't even herself. Hania cannot believe she snapped at the guy who just saved her life twice. Shin Juno simply waves it off, telling her not to worry about it. The monsters are cleared and nobody got hurt, so they should start packing up. 30 minutes have flown by, and Shin Juno asks her to return his pendant. Hania pulls the relic out and quietly hands it back to him. Shin Juno inspects the stone, noting that its internal glow has completely shifted. This confirms she actually triggered its hidden ability, the meteorite perception. It is a rare A-rank item, found only in the burning harpy's lair. Once equipped, the relic dramatically boosts her senses when conditions are met. At peak activation, her focus skyrockets, granting her an incredible combat edge. The stone glows brightly, allowing them to tap into near-superhuman perception. But here is the catch: the activation trigger is incredibly complicated. Her emotions must reach an absolute peak, and for her, that means intense fear. So Shin Juno deliberately pushed her into a state of sheer terror. It was a risky play, but his wild gamble actually paid off. To awaken the girl, even at such an incredibly high market price, they are extremely rare. Junseo gave up on the idea. Still, he knew the guy would find him. In just 2 days, that made things a lot easier, but this was only the beginning. Hanjia could feel herself slowly waking up using that special item. She needed serious practice to regain her strength, Junseo told Jia to. Listen closely. Her primary task was to focus exclusively on monsters. To do this successfully, she would first have to completely replace her short bow. She was easily strong enough to handle a longbow and shoot from afar. Junseo added that this would keep her at a safer distance and feel less afraid of the beasts. Jia thanked Junseo deeply for the incredible, life-changing opportunity he offered. And for awakening her, she admitted that when she thought she was dying, she felt a sudden, powerful surge of energy from this magical pendant. It felt like everything around her had frozen, giving her the courage to conquer any upcoming obstacle. In that moment, Jia could clearly see her target and knew exactly where to shoot. She noted that although she held a highly coveted A-class in potential in other aspects, her actual combat strength was barely a D-class. Every single attempt to change this failed, only adding to her disappointment. Yet in the short time they had known each other, she had already grown a massive amount, Jia realized. She was capable of great things and became genuinely excited for the first Time Jia noticed she was talking too much, but Jun Seo said that it'd be highly difficult for her alone, so he kindly gave her his own number so she could call him for backup. Overjoyed, Jia thanked him and also promised to leave her number. Just then, Jun Seo received an urgent alert on his phone from the powerful guild leader, Yun Tihyun, warning him that there was an emergency. Jun Seo quickly contacted the Hunters Association. Tihyun replied, promising to call back as soon as his briefing finished. Jun Seo barely had time to mention he was ready to help resolve this critical disaster because Tihyun had previously gifted him such an incredibly useful item. Tihyun expressed his delight that it worked, thanking the young creator for agreeing to help. Right at that moment, the secretary Min Haisu entered and said that the association president had finally returned and they could head out. She noted how highly unusual this situation was. Normally, they would receive an official document who would have expected the president of the association to summon them for a highly private, face-to-face meeting. The guild leader grimly suspected that perhaps an S-class gate had reappeared, but Tihyun knew they would be fine since Jun Seo had agreed to help them out. The leader knew that if the young creator fought with like before, there would be no danger. It was the right decision to contact him. Secretary Min Haisu noticed her boss was in a much better mood than after the brutal spider dungeon, all thanks to this brilliant young creator. She realized that the guild leader had been acting pretty strangely lately. He was fully prepared to give the young man unlimited support. Who could have predicted that Tihyun would make such an incredible, legendary offer that was impossible to refuse? Although Tihyun is a wild berserker who struggles to manage his fiery temper, he is far more calculated and sensible than he lets on. The secretary knew this young weapon creator was hiding a terrifying, godlike potential. Real danger was definitely ahead. She would never create a weapon that the guild leader liked. He decided that she had to find out everything herself, since the guild leader rarely invited him. Soon, Tihyun and Haisu approached the association president's office where a security guard stood by the door. The guard mentioned he was pleased to meet the guild leader. Tihyun asked if anyone else would be attending the meeting. The security guard replied that he had heard another guild leader was invited too. Right then, another guest stepped from the elevator. He waved his hand and remarked that Yoon Tihyun had been quite active lately. He thought he was the only one who could truly throw Tihyun off balance. It was the head of the Shinanoa Guild, Kim Ik-yuk. Kim Ik-yuk sneered that his old acquaintance had capable guild members and that he just needed to improve himself. Tihyun replied that he was far too busy to entertain such ridiculous provocations. Kim Ik-yuk suggested that Tihyun was only busy clearing low-level dungeons. Tihyun probably wanted newbies from those low-tier gates to support him. Kim Ik-yuk added that even though dungeon ranks had errors, hunters entered them to clear the threat, not to play rescue squad. Haisu was furious, but her boss signaled her to hold back. Soon, a guard reported to the association president that the leaders of the Overkill and Shinanoa guilds had arrived. The president chuckled, adding that he could already hear them arguing from down the hall. Association president Han Xiaoman remarked that nothing ever changes in this chaotic world. After a long wait, the security guard suggested that Haisu have a cup of tea. She replied she was fine. The head of the association said he had an urgent task for both guilds. 3 days ago, unstable gates appeared and vanished on the outskirts. Han Xiaoman noted that these were not gates with errors, but rather completely undefined gates. Their mana level was impossible to even measure. The leader of the Overkill Guild found this highly strange. Such gates normally could not escape evaluation. Usually, a gate's rank is calculated in 2 distinct ways. First, a specialized device measures the total amount of mana radiating from the gate. Because of this, the rank matches the rank of the monsters waiting inside. Second, they analyze data gathered by scouts sent in by the association. The president of the association explained that standard Rankaro dungeons appear when internal mana spikes rapidly, but this is entirely different from an unmeasurable gate. Tihyun calmly asked if they had already sent scouts inside. The president replied that they had tried that several times. However, not a single scout returned. Kim Ik-yuk gasped in disbelief. Did the association seriously not know the dungeon's rank or have any details? Why had they not been warned about this earlier? Han Xiaoman explained that they had no idea how long the unstable barrier on this unranked gate would hold. if left unchecked. It was only a matter of time before monsters began spilling out of the gate. This had happened before, and every single time it became a living hell. Han Xiaoman warned that this was a crisis. This time, no refusal from the guilds would be accepted. The association president wanted both of their guilds to join forces and conquer this unstable gate. Originally, they planned to recruit the Hungmu Guild, but a sudden overseas trip ruled them out. They couldn't just stand by. This crisis was serious enough to unite 3 major guilds. And Komen gave everyone 2 days to prepare, promising full financial backing. Along with top-tier rewards, whatever the guilds require, the association will deliver absolute support. Tahan wondered if the raid squad should only include guild elites. Honyo replied that it didn't matter, since these active gates were already sparking massive panic across society. They could also recruit a few trustworthy outliers to fill the ranks, leaving the association headquarters, the Shinwa Guild. Leader Kimik Huk returned to his office, immediately ordering a team assembled. Made of rank hunters and above, outside freelancers had to be recruited. Within 2 days, Kimik Huk suspected that his rival, Tahan, held a secret card up his sleeve. That smug smirk during their meeting was far too suspicious. Kimik Huk ordered his assistant to add her, but the assistant immediately objected, pointing out that Kang Yurin no longer worked with their guild. With her volatile personality, she would only cause trouble, yet the master insisted he wanted her right in front of him, demanding his staff make it happen. At all costs, the subordinates realized that since Kang Yurin was unattached, it was their golden chance to snatch her up. Then, 2 days flew by. Hunters slowly assembled near the gate, tension rising. Muttering broke out among the early arrivals, who dared to keep them waiting. Only 5 minutes remained, typical behavior for the arrogant Shinwa Guild. Always rolling in at the absolute last second, a hunter spat in disgust, muttering how much he loathed their lack of basic respect. Would bullet to the skull teach them basic manners? A nearby hunter warned Sunjai to hold his tongue. Meanwhile, Tahan thanked Shin Juno for accepting this unexpected invitation. Shin Juno casually pointed out he had already used the master's gift. A man has his pride after all, but that was not the sole motivation. A secret quest had triggered. A rare scenario dungeon appeared. He had to clear this lost world and claim the prize. Just 5 days ago, a glowing system notification had flashed before him. Only a select few ever unlocked these secret missions. The official raid selection had not even started. Yet Shin Juno already held the prompt. He had no intention of backing down. These hidden trials are brutally tough, but the payoffs are always legendary, sometimes even awakening entirely new skills. But he never expected this specific dungeon to be the target. Soon, the elites of the Shinwa Guild arrived. Tahan quietly apologized in advance for their leader's notorious attitude. The deputy guild leader smirked in genuine surprise. Why were their rivals so early? Kimik Huk mockingly apologized, claiming they were incredibly busy, unlike the Overkill Guild, who clearly had time to waste. Kimik Huk sneered that they only cleared low-level gates anyway, so free time was a given. The deputy commander muttered that it was not worth wasting breath on their insults. It was far better to ignore them. Shin Juno noted that Overkill and the Shinwa Guild were still at each other's throats. It was a deep rivalry, fueled by endless media debates over who held the ultimate rank. Kimik Huk's eyes fell on the new recruit and scoffed, questioning if this weakling was honestly their supposed trump card. This kid is seriously pushing his luck. After all, dungeon clearing is no joke. Did he actually expect to be carried out of there? Shinwa Guild members tried to calm their furious leader, pointing out they had a new recruit too. But Yurin quickly cut in, reminding everyone they had almost no time left. No time to argue, we have to move. Yurin was the country's strongest elemental master, capable of wielding all 6 elements with absolute ease. An S-rank powerhouse, Taihun admitted their rivals brought an incredibly stacked stellar lineup, but the Overkill Guild representative bragged it would be too easy, claiming he would handle everything. Meanwhile, Shin Juno kept a close eye on this place. In his past life, this entire raid had ended in complete disaster. Only Taihun survived the final boss, thanks purely to his specialized penetration skill. Shortly after, the dungeon gates vanished. It was a complete mystery. 7 high-ranking, elite awakened hunters just disappeared off the face of the earth. The association searched frantically, but they came up empty-handed. No clues, no guarantees this new run would turn out any better. Right on cue, the Shinwa guild leader started acting completely unhinged. Stepping through the portal, the players found themselves inside a massive, towering castle. It looked magnificent, but the inner doors refused to budge, someone suggested. Blasting them open with pure force, but they did not even scratch, Kimik Huck told everyone to back off, stepping up to smash them open himself. The stubborn guild leader began pounding the doors with heavy blows, trying to smash them. One player asked why he was not using his skills. Kimik Huck scoffed, explaining he would not waste his powerful abilities on simple trash. Just then, Urin pointed out that monsters were already respawning behind them. Kimik Huck laughed. That was perfect, boasting they needed to be at least that strong to witness his true power. With a roar, he charged. Soon, a chaotic battle erupted between both guilds and the beasts. With the clash in full swing, Urin asked Shin Juno if he planned to join in. He casually replied that he was just a support producer. Hearing this, Urin scoffed. Refusing to fight alongside such a mediocre team, she expected to see elite hunters here, but these guys looked incredibly average. They could barely handle a basic monster. If she had known the raid would be this pathetic, she would have refused. But Shin Juno noticed something off. The infected mana radiating from the monsters looked highly unusual, almost unnatural. He wondered why the mana threads controlling them were twitching so violently. Looking up, Shin Juno spotted a strange object suspended above. Every single stream of corrupted mana converged right there. Destroying it would solve everything. But he could not risk exposing his real powers. Nearby, Urin casually demonstrated her incredible magic, blasting a random flying insect out of the air. Shin Juno asked why she was wasting mana on bugs instead of targeting the actual monsters. Urin snapped, insisting she only kills what she feels like. He playfully teased that she was probably just terrified of bugs. Furious, she denied it and told him to shut his mouth. She was totally annoyed. Shin Juno chuckled, saying he was not trying to bug her, but still pointed out another creepy-crawly landing nearby. Meanwhile, Kimik Huck was struggling with the horde, wondering why on earth Urin was wasting her S-rank magic elsewhere, but suddenly, the guild leader realized the monsters had completely frozen. Grinning, he boasted that he was just warming up, claiming these beasts were nothing but simple trifles. Shin Juno stared down at the broken plates and realized they were actually the source of the resurrection. If he had not seen the infected mana, he would not have understood a thing. The young man thought this was why the cleanup operation had failed back in his past life. Taihun claimed that was everything, but since nothing was certain, they needed to search the whole first floor. The deputy guild leader nodded, saying he understood completely, and ordered his men to follow. Kimik Hyuk barked at everyone to get out of the way because he insisted on entering first. The other hunters watched in total surprise. Was that tainted mana truly pooling inside that closet? They really should have blasted it first. The hunters cleared every single room, finding nothing out of the ordinary. Had all the beasts died off instantly? The first floor was cleared pretty fast, so they decided to head upstairs to investigate next. Kimik Hyuk sneered and told Taihun to stop acting like he was the boss here. He then followed his associates straight toward the rival guild. The leader was growing furious. Did they really just decide to ignore him? He needed to crush their haughty pride. Suddenly, Kimik Hyuk felt a sharp ache inside. Had he pushed too far? Shin Juno walked alongside him, watching Kimik Hyuk closely, but the entire mood in the area was incredibly tense. Taihun claimed there was nothing special around, yet he felt compelled to double-check. Shin Juno suddenly detected a massive surge of tainted mana directly ahead. Kimik Hyuk stubbornly insisted that he had no time to activate his special skill. Taihun and his squad pushed forward, slashing through with their weapons and unleashed abilities. A sudden alert warned them that a powerful, stealthy beast was hiding right ahead. The deputy leader reported he was fine, and his companion, holding a weapon, agreed, though he noticed something was off. He could not spot the young man who had been sticking near their leader. Taihun was so utterly focused on the fight that he did not even realize Shin Juno had vanished. Meanwhile, Shin Juno knew this skirmish was growing far more intense. Having already absorbed the mana, he needed to now watch closely. Our hero suddenly spots a little girl holding a doll. Shin Juno wondered what on earth a child was doing in this dangerous dungeon. She looked up and asked if he was indeed a hunter, then urged him to follow her right away. Shin Juno wondered how this child could possibly recognize his rank. She quickly explained that her sister, waiting upstairs, had promised her a strong hunter would arrive to rescue them. Once that happened, they would all escape this place together, since he had made it all. This far, he had to be the savior destined to rescue her sister, the girl guided. The young man straight to her. She was absolutely certain they already knew each other, the kid. But the doll pointed and declared it was finally time to go, the brave man from her stories had finally arrived. Shin Juno silently assumed this poor girl had endured severe psychological trauma. Shin Juno gently explained that the official association had dispatched him. The girl perked up, asking if he was truly sent there. Shin Juno asked the girl to explain exactly what had occurred. She dropped to her knees, crying out her thanks for his timely arrival, and began her tale. She had been sent as the fourth scout of this deadly dungeon. Since the first three failed to return, she was tasked with exploring it. But the moment she stepped inside, creepy dolls lunged at her from every direction. The girl admitted she was caught off guard and bolted back toward the gateway, but the heavy door slammed shut and refused to budge. She was entirely trapped. Shin Juno realized this was the exact same scenario as before. He then asked if she knew what had happened to. She noticed the other scouts, finding it bizarre that they still seemed fully conscious. At one point, they suddenly lunged to attack her, forcing her to run and end up completely trapped, where she met a young girl who saved her and mentioned that her little sister often played with her. Shin Junso then asked for her name. She replied that her name was Elizabeth. Shin Junso insisted she needed to go with him, warning it was too dangerous, but the child protested, arguing it was much scarier outside where non-stop battles were raging. Shin Junso realized that the dungeon secrets were slipping. Before him stood humanoid monsters. Was this really a scout's identification? The face perfectly matched the missing person profile from the association president's files. One player realized some of these faces were familiar. One even resembled the guild leader, but the players soon received orders strictly forbidding any attacks since they were dealing with missing scouts. Stealth cannot be reactivated for several minutes after making a move, and speed is heavily penalized. They could not just be eliminated. Kim Kai-hyuk believed he was facing monsters with stealth capabilities, but were they actually human scouts? The guild leader noticed their speed plunge and prepared to wipe them out with a single blow. But get this, an overkill guild player suddenly aimed his weapon at Kim Kai-hyuk, shouting that the guild leader had completely lost his mind. These were actual human beings who desperately needed to be saved, and they needed to find a cure for their monstrous state. Kim Kai-hyuk snapped back, when someone targets a player there are only two choices. You either destroy them first or get wiped out yourself. He added that anyone showing hostility would be eliminated, and this shooter was no exception. Shin Junso watched, thinking the guild leader's behavior was completely out of control. Taehyun stepped in, telling Kim Kai-hyuk to stand down and listen. But Kim Kai-hyuk spat back that the others were clueless, though he was ready to reveal the harsh truth. Suddenly, the girls yelled for the guild leader to block the oncoming attacks. Taehyun made it clear this was a business deal, not a plea. He offered to transfer the entire raid reward and Shinhua guild funding. That massive sum should be enough. Kim Kai-hyuk growled, warning them not to push him or he would slaughter everyone. Shin Junso hoped this bought them some precious time. Taehyun instructed his team to focus entirely on finding a way to save those poor scouts. Meanwhile, the little girl asked if he had seen the dolls outside, admitting it was absolutely terrifying to stand among them. She explained they were mysteriously bound in purple strings, until severed. The dolls would never stop attacking. Unfortunately, these cursed strings were incredibly tough and hard to cut. Shin Junso asked both the girl and the scout if they felt terrified. He realized that these doll forms could indeed be reversed, meaning he could save his missing colleagues who had been transformed. The child explained that he must immediately disable the device on the doll body. The very instant the thread snaps, but trying to force the strings off would cause the victims to explode. She warned that was all the information she had. Would it be enough? Shin Junso was grateful that she had provided such clear and helpful answers to his difficult questions. They had only 20 seconds left before their stealth expired and spelt certain death. The team continued to fight the doll monsters, realizing they desperately needed Kang Yuran's lethal assistance. Could she stop the dolls? Yuran snapped. It all just annoyed her. Still, the guild leader fought on, repelling the relentless monster onslaught. When the timer ran out, the skill of Kim Hyuk deactivated. The old pain returned. Shin Juno spoke up. They had barely saved the scouts Protagonist was ready. I will handle this, he promised. Tihun asked the support where he was going. Shin Juno replied that he needed to check on a few minor details. The overkill leader warned the young man never to act on his own in the future. Just then, a hunter warned that the scouts were vanishing. Too late. Tihun immediately roared for everyone to freeze. An ambush struck, but Tihun parried it instantly. Moving with lightning speed, the guild leader realized the enemy slipped right past him, but thanks to the tainted mana threads, our hero clearly saw their movements. Tihun thrust his sword forward, repelling another attack from the puppets. Shin Juno spoke up. Weak spots found, he would mark them all. The other players had to target these exact spots to protect the host. The strategy actually worked. Tihun was completely amazed. Who would have thought of aiming like that? Their only weakness is the device right in the center, so hit them there. Kim Ik-hyuk froze. Why did the doll shatter from a single strike? This had never happened before. Tihun demanded to know what Shin Juno was checking. On the first floor, Shin Juno replied that there was nothing special down there. He simply explored alone and stumbled upon a surviving scout. She was in terrible shape and refused to leave, but he still managed to gather some crucial details about what was happening. Shin Juno also reported that he discovered the weak points of the scouts, explaining how a young girl had guided him. She guided him because her parents are trapped inside. Hearing this, Kim Ik-hyuk warned that this sounded incredibly suspicious. After all, they could not help but feels skeptical. How could some ordinary girl survive down here anyway? These gates are heavily guarded. It seems impossible for her to slip past, but the association monitors them constantly. No one enters without being noticed. Tihun said he understood the concern, but warned against jumping to conclusions. Kim Ik-hyuk snapped back, claiming Tihun was obsessed with picking apart arguments from everyone else. Tihun sighed, noting he hated pointless bickering, but made it clear he would teach his opponents how to cooperate. While clearing a dungeon, another player agreed, scoffing that the Shinwa guild always acted like they were above everyone else. They decided to seize this perfect opportunity to teach them a lesson. Soon, the rival guilds began to argue, trying to prove their superiority. Shin Juno watched the chaotic shouting match, completely unable to understand what was happening. Why were tempers flaring? The girl whispered she had only slightly nudged their emotions and they were already fighting. It looked totally pathetic. She silently thanked Shin Juno. Because of him, she easily used her brainwashing ability on these strangers. She needed to get close without raising suspicion. At first, our hero suspected the child was a monster, but then decided she was just an innocent kid. Turns out, he had been brainwashed the entire time. She was just a normal child, but he had been completely brainwashed by the Hunters Association. The moment they met, Shin Juno realized he was already too late. He had to act. He had to stop this before everyone was completely brainwashed. By now, thick threads of infected mana had fully bound him from head to toe. Worse, the exact same thing had already happened to the rest of the group. It turned out everyone was brainwashed. Who could have guessed she would do this? She used infected mana to control not just their bodies, but their minds too. Shin Juno immediately triggered his passive skill, mana absorption. It was time. She picked the wrong opponent. The monster girl gasped, could he really absorb this? Shin Juno yelled out that this girl was the enemy and ordered an attack. He demanded they capture her, but she just smiled and called for her parents. She cried that they were bullying her, and massive puppets instantly rose to defend her. The dolls guarded the child, while Kim Ik-hyuk roared for everyone to move aside. He wanted to obliterate them all at once, but the girl smirked at her brother. She told him to prove himself, while Tihun screamed for Kim Ik-hyuk to wake up. But the leader of the Shinwa Guild was already lost to the infected mana. The glowing, corrupted threads had completely entangled his face. It was done. The monster girl cheered, praising her brother Louis for doing such a great job. Shin Juno felt the massive flow of infected mana rising from Kim Ik-hyuk's hand. She giggled that her little brother always loved hiding behind a mask of modesty. The creature added that it was so much fun making comrades fight each other. Her brother was a complete puppet now. What on earth is going to happen next? Tihun shouted that he would restrain Kim Ik-hyuk and begged for cover fire. The gunman promised to back him up, but Kim Ik-hyuk's armor was already active. His protective armor skill automatically triggers whenever the guild leader senses mortal danger. While active, he becomes completely invulnerable and absolutely impossible to distract. can last for several hours. Seeing this, the girl scoffed that he was useless. Since he was out of commission, they only had to handle the remaining 3. The other guild members prepared to continue their battle against the puppet monsters. But Shin Juno noticed that their energy signatures were on an entirely different level. These new dolls were nothing like the weak ones they faced earlier. Each of them had the strength of a high-tier dungeon boss, extremely dangerous. Ignoring them was too risky, so a head-on battle was their only real choice. Still, Shin Juno had a bad feeling that there was more to this magic. Suddenly, Tae-hun ordered Manga and Jahai to focus on the female puppet. The guild leader declared that he would handle the male doll himself. They had to finish this fight as quickly as humanly possible, no delays. The players acknowledged the command and immediately rushed forward to eliminate their targets. With his massive two-handed sword, Tae-hun charged straight into the enemy lines. As they fought, Shin Juno wondered about her power to turn people into puppets. If it bypassed Kim Ik-hyuk's impenetrable defense, that was basically a cheat skill. It was a skill designed specifically to turn high-ranking hunters into helpless dolls. Yet Kim Ik-hyuk's sudden transformation had happened in a single split second. And that was even after Shin Juno absorbed all the surrounding infected mana. Before he could trigger his mana absorption, the threads had already trapped everyone. Elizabeth had the perfect chance to turn them all, but she held back. Right at that moment, one of the players begins targeting the female doll. Unloading targeted gunfire on her, Shin Juno watches in shock. Is this really a game? Why would Elizabeth expose herself? She did guide our hero to the scout, revealing the critical weaknesses of those who became dolls. Elizabeth successfully gained the hero's trust, only to completely shatter it, instantly showing her true colors, rendering all their progress completely useless. It is bizarre, even a master manipulator wouldn't make such a reckless move. Almost as if she was forced to fight, the battle was dragging out. Tae-hun believed he could channel his power into Shin Juno's custom weapon. Gaining far better control, then he triggers a devastating berserk explosion. The other hunters knew this was the price of victory in battle. Brutal methods were necessary here. Ja looks over at the deputy leader, assuring him that this single strike would absolutely be enough to finish it. He loads an enchanted bullet and fires. The magic round hits hard. A massive hole is blasted through the doll woman's chest. Seeing this, the guild leader, the Overkill guild leader, realizes this raid is way harder than expected. Shocked that their enemies are only relying on basic physical attacks. No magic, just brute force. Still, Tae-hun braced for a psychic attack. But thanks to his berserker class, he easily shrugs them off. Tae-hun orders the squad to hold their positions and wait for orders. They must guard against mental attacks. He yells to Elizabeth that her backup is gone. Both of her guardian dolls have been thoroughly destroyed, leaving her completely isolated. The girl giggles, calling it perfect, as she tosses the doll aside. This bizarre reaction leaves the deputy leader and the hunters utterly baffled. Kim Yurin warns that the girl is acting incredibly strange right now. Like something truly horrific is about to happen, despite the quiet. Shin Juno silently hopes this raid ends quietly, proving his bad feelings wrong. But then a massive explosion erupts, painting the entire room in red. Tae-hun winces. Even for a monster, this is a sickening sight. Still, the Overkill Guild Master tells the squad they can finally breathe easy now. But get this, a heartbeat later, something unbelievable happens. The 4 hunters freeze instantly, not from magic or a mental strike. Something completely unprecedented has just crossed into this domain. An absolutely crushing pressure. The hidden boss of the dungeon has arrived. The legendary elder vampire, Elizabeth Bea, smiles and thanks them warmly. She had been waiting forever for someone to smash her 2 dolls. Those wretched puppets betrayed her, trapping her in a state of eternal torment. Ungrateful pests who sealed her powerful soul inside a useless, fragile body. But now she is fully revived. Kim Yurin shouts for everyone to mobilize. Do not just stand there, get ready to fight. Even Tae-hun can't face this alone. She is too dangerous. Elizabeth chuckles, mocking them as cute little rats. The vampire states she is starved and prepares to feast on them. She activates her terrifying essence drain skill, and it is absolute agony. Kim Yurin knows elite undead excel at absorption, but this is insane. How can she drain so many targets simultaneously from this distance? He suppressed them instantly, completely skipping any sort of preparation. What kind of monster was he? Elizabeth turned to Tae-hun. noting that Shin Juno was incredibly strong, even in this state. If he had full control, things would be very different. But the vampire added that now, that would never happen. Ti-hun unleashed a massive energy attack, causing a devastating blast. The damage was massive. Ti-hun bled as Shin Juno watched. The guild leader was utterly confused. What did he mean? Shin Juno explained that the berserk blast has scale limits. Otherwise, his body would break under that constant maximum strain. Usually, berserkers adjust their output depending on the situation. But he admitted he was still just a novice at this. Still, when the guild leader destroyed that arachnid monster earlier, he used less than half of his max power, and this time was no different. Ti-hun replied that even so, the strongest sword Shin Juno made had completely shattered. Without a proper weapon, he could never unleash the true power he kept locked away. But he promised to buy some time. Shin Juno took action. The young creator decided to push his abilities to the absolute limit. He offered to share pure energy instead of mana, linking them together. From that moment, they would share a permanent, unbreakable connection. With their fates tied, the demonic armor creation process finally began. He completely burned through his stored, infected mana to find a weapon. Searching deep within the demon world, the perfect sword was finally forged. A massive, blazing sword materialized right before the guild leader. This was the demonic blade Leviathan, and now it was Ti-hun's turn. Taking the weapon, Ti-hun realized something was very different about it. Standard skills would be easy to accept, but this had something else. Even though Shin Juno made it, the blade felt incredibly wild. Holding the Leviathan, the metal surged with a raw, uncontrollable heat. Elizabeth watched as the sword glowed hot, radiating intense fire energy. It was clearly infected with demonic mana, carrying a deadly element. This weapon was on a whole different level of power. Sensing danger, Elizabeth activated her blood magic, covering the entire area. Shin Juno noticed the massive scale of her deadly blood domain. He wondered if she was trying to absorb and block them. Elizabeth smiled, knowing that even weakened, her skill remained highly versatile. She carefully distributed her mana, slowly paralyzing the enemy's body. Her magic would melt everything down to the bone, muscle, and vein. Before long, her targets would be completely stripped of their strength. Ti-hun briefly froze in place, but he refused to stay down. Breaking free of the paralysis, the guild leader lunged forward once more. Elizabeth was shocked that he could still move in her bloodbath. It was as if his berserker body was no longer human, driven entirely by the demonic sword rather than his own will. Now his strength easily surpassed anything he had shown before. She smiled, saying it would be fun. Now she would destroy those puppets. Blood magic flared, yet Ti-hun stood firm, gripping his sword, no reaction. After a long, brutal fight, the vampire queen, Elizabeth Bea, lay wounded. The target was beaten. Shin Juno could only watch the scene in awe. Ti-hun had been holding back insane power. He hid it deep inside. He probably did not even realize. Suddenly, a rare prize appeared before him. Shin Juno silently hoped this reward was connected to healing or magical arts. Then the materialization skill for Leviathan unlocked. Next time he used it, no searching was required, easy summoning. The weapon would simply appear. Shin Juno was completely caught off guard. Wait, what did that mean? Isn't summoning weapons normally completely random? Shin Juno warned the exhausted guild leader not to even try getting up. Standing up was out of the question. He literally could not walk. Such a crushing power was used. Ti-hun had taken devastating damage. It was a miracle the man was still conscious right now. Rest was mandatory. Their lives were safe, but they were completely broken. Meanwhile, the hidden dungeon boss, Elizabeth Bea, bled out nearby. She weakly smiled, congratulating her little brother on his hard-won victory. It looked critical, yet Shin Juno was troubled by a lingering question. Why did the system award clear notifications if she was still breathing? He demanded answers. How exactly was she connected to this place? Shin Juno pointed out that those massive fists pulsed with her infected mana. But she clearly lacked full control over their chaotic movements. Instead, the fists seemed programmed to protect her above all else. Elizabeth quietly confessed to it. Yes, they were keeping her alive. After all, she was a massive battery, feeding them her endless mana. Long ago, she had foolishly chosen to indulge their every toxic desire. She saved those drowning, desperate rats, acting on a sudden whim. If that had been the end, it would just be another weird story. But those rats turned out to be far more than ordinary pests. They refused to let her go, forcing her to accept their invitation. She had never heard such a bizarre demand from human beings. And just like that, she found herself completely trapped in their net. She did not know when the shift happened. Suddenly, she was trapped. No longer a guest, she was treated as part of their family. And honestly, she was happy until their dark intentions became clear. Now invisible threads bound her body, turning her into a prisoner. She blamed herself. She was the one who gave them control. Her own soft heart had turned her infinitely weak and vulnerable. So they sealed away her incredible powers, locking her in this state, forced to provide them with the infected mana needed for their defense. Shin Juno questioned her, protection from what exactly? Elizabeth admitted she wasn't sure, but she pointed to the dead lands outside. Surely he had noticed the barren terrain before entering her estate. Shin Juno recalled the endless, dead desert stretching out with no end in sight. It is not a real desert, but a spatial barrier built to protect the estate. Elizabeth adds that the woman created it, using her own power to protect herself from the monsters lurking on the other side of the rift. She says that judging by his reaction, a rift must exist in his world too. Was that how they both ended up here? Their worlds had suffered the exact same tragedy. A rift appeared in the sky, mana awakened, and gates began popping up one after another. Monsters far more vicious than vampires crawled out of them. Elizabeth notes this, while Shin Juno asks how her world is coping with the gates. How many years have actually passed since the very first rift tore open? Elizabeth admits she does not know much, since she has not seen anything. Herself, after being sealed inside this body, she suffered through dark, motionless years. During that time, her entire world fell apart, leaving this estate completely isolated. Only recently did she regain her movement, and since then, something strange happened. A system status window appeared right before her eyes. Shin Juno is stunned. If she can see the system, that means she must be a player too. Now watch, Elizabeth quickly cuts him off, saying he has far too many questions. She cannot answer them all. As she begins to lose consciousness, she mutters that dying might not be so bad. Shin Juno notices her body is already decaying. System alert reveals he can use the demonic shackles of control item now. Shin Juno quickly pulls out the box and flips it open, letting out a sharp gasp. Suddenly, a strange, glowing energy begins to swirl around the two of them. Elizabeth weakly asks what he did, as the system confirms the confinement item is active. It can be used on defeated monsters who are currently in critical condition. Shin Juno knows this is no coincidence. He can save her, but he has another motive. Once successfully equipped, the targeted monster will recover from their critical state. They will completely obey the player who used the item, serving as a familiar. Shin Juno has seen other players with familiars before, but never quite like this. This is his first time seeing a fellow player turned into a familiar. The contract is signed, binding his soul to the ancient vampire, Elizabeth Bea. Elizabeth Bea is now officially registered as Shin Juno's loyal familiar. Suddenly, the mighty vampire shrinks down, transforming into a tiny animal. Shin Juno admits he suspected this, but the actual result is still quite shocking. Who would guess she would become a cat instead of a bat? Even the necklace shrank. Elizabeth is furious. How dare this brat turn her into his familiar? It hurts her pride. Honestly, she would rather die than endure this kind of embarrassing humiliation. Shin Juno wonders if maintaining a human form is really that difficult for her. Either way, Elizabeth has no choice but to accept her current reality. If there is normal or infected mana available, her abilities can be temporarily unblocked. As it stands, she cannot even perform a basic transformation on her own. Shin Juno gently picks up the cat, noting she can still communicate like this. He asks her straight out if those two dolls had actually deceived her. The cat snarls back that she already shared everything and has nothing more to say. Shin Juno quietly recalls her words about how they stole her ancient powers. Just to survive, he cannot help but wonder if such a desperate life is even worth living. He does not fully understand this family, but they certainly seem highly suspicious. He looked closer, quite unsure if they even possessed actual thoughts or egos. They were more like empty, programmed dolls than living beings, but the cat quietly insisted there was nothing unusual here. A person's mind simply adapts to their physical form. They find themselves trapped in this state after being forced to use infected mana. So their minds and egos simply rot. Did he honestly expect her to? Pity these hollow puppets, Shin Jun so quietly replied that it wasn't necessary. The young man added that he and most others would never choose to live such a life. Shin Jun so walked up to the broken male doll. He thought that if he had been forced into a doll's body, he wouldn't have survived. The cat stared, wondering. In shock at who this young man really was, Shin Jun so focused his mana directly into his palm, commanding the cat to come closer. Elizabeth realized she had no choice but to obey even his simplest order. Shin Jun so explained to the cat that this shiny gem was a crystal of essence, typically used for spells. Tied to dark magic to preserve a fraction of one's mana and soul, they must have put an item like this inside the puppet to anchor its spirit. They clearly lacked true raw power, but their magical craft was incredibly advanced. The cat hated this. What is he talking about? Is there really no other path? She thought, the woman said. She had witnessed thousands of different visions over the last few days, yet the outcome never changed. The violent collision of their two worlds had already been unfolding for years, and these catastrophic events would only accelerate uncontrollably, even if they desperately managed to delay this tragedy as long as possible. In 5 years, all time to prepare would be gone. This was not happening now. It had to be an ancient vision triggered by memory. Could these belong to her own father? The man eagerly asked about her method. Would her theory on alternate dimensions and parallel worlds actually help them survive this disaster? The woman explained that if Elizabeth cooperated, they could at least shield the borders of their own land around the estate, but major problems would arise later. If this world collapses, their home will drift endlessly between two separate dimensions. Only a traveler from another world finding them could save it, and yet that search could take thousands of years, leaving them to slowly await their ultimate doom. The man urgently reminded her that they were supposed to have a few more years of safety. The young boy pleaded that his sister Elizabeth was completely different from them. Couldn't they at least save her? He added that their entire family only survived because of what Elizabeth did back then. Perhaps this was fate. Unchangeable, meaning at least one of them had to survive. But here's the twist. Elizabeth would never willingly agree to it. Trapped and bound tight with heavy thread, the girl cried that she trusted them. Why would they do this to her? Her family looked down in silence, whispering how incredibly sorry they really were. They locked her away in a dark box. The woman explained that even after transferring their own souls into these wooden dolls, their consciousness would remain fully intact. The man added that they would easily retain their sanity for a few hundred years before everything slowly began to wither away and fade. After 2,000 years, they wouldn't even remember their own names, remaining as mindless dolls, even locked away in their isolated dimension. No one knew what terrifying dangers lay ahead. Above all else, they desperately had to keep Elizabeth safe. Nobody knows how long this takes, but they will act until someone from another world arrives to take Elizabeth away. Shin Juno uses 50 points of infected mana to temporarily unleash the hidden power of Elizabeth's familiar. This leaves her utterly devastated, wondering why they never told her sooner. Shin Juno coldly replies that they would have all just died together anyway. It was completely unavoidable, and she would have perished right alongside them. Shin Juno orders her to stand up because time is running out. He secretly notes this is far from a full recovery. After all, 50 points of infected mana only buys them 3 minutes. He paid a massive price for this activation, not for her to sit around crying. He adds that Elizabeth needs to finally understand the truth. All this time they had been acting like brainless puppets just to protect her. Now she must help them find peace. She desperately cries out that she cannot do this, but Shin Juno tells her to stop being so utterly pathetic. Even if their doom and demise were set in stone, they could have easily chosen to spend their final days happily. Instead, they did the opposite, locking themselves away forever just for the sake of her future, a future they were not even sure actually existed. He adds this is the absolute least she can do for their extreme devotion. It is her duty. Suddenly, the bonus goal is cleared. The truth about Elizabeth is revealed, and the reward is a mischievous treasure chest. The previously cleared dungeon is now 100% complete, yielding an extra reward. With everything settled, the members of both guilds step through the exit gate. Outside, medical and rescue teams are already waiting to help them recover. Fortunately, everyone survived the ordeal, though quite a few of the Hunters are badly injured. Shin Juno feels like he spent way too much time inside than he originally planned. Later, he asks the cat how this world feels. Compared to her home, Elizabeth sighs, saying there is simply no comparison. Mana here is incredibly faint, but she has no other options. She promises that no matter how weak this world is, she will make the absolute most of it. It is her ultimate duty, but honestly, that is exactly why she cannot stop. Drinking tonight, it was a rough day. Suddenly, she senses she is not alone in her dark room, demanding to know what this little pest is doing here. Did it come to ruin her night? The intruder flicks on the lights, complaining that calling him a pest is a bit too harsh. He pours some wine while waiting for his colleague. He is utterly bored, so she should really show some sympathy. She demands to know why he is here, warning that he cannot even afford that expensive bottle. He chuckles, calling her incredibly rude, but insists he is not here for personal matters. He simply heard that she recently entered one of those low-tier dungeons. He reminds her of his deep fascination with those neglected dungeons, especially since whispers suggest there is actually some real fun to be had there. He finds it hard to believe she saw absolutely nothing. After all, who would have guessed that a proud queen like her would pass out so pitifully? During a routine raid, Kim Yurin narrows her eyes, explaining that the situation shifted. In a bizarre way, even though she blacked out, she still witnessed the final outcome clearly. Yunhan managed to destroy the powerful boss with just 2 swift swings of a basic sword lent to him by a lowly support. That berserker's explosion unleashed a completely unprecedented level of raw power. Her companion points out that there are different kinds of S ranks, meaning he is absolutely worth hunting, though Kim Yurin is not so sure about that. While Taihan made a massive impression, they need to focus on the support. Kim Yurin assumed he was just a minor D rank whose only skill was making weapons. Yet those weapons withstood the absolute peak power of their guild master. The man admits that having someone around who can forge a truly great sword is highly useful. But a tool is just a tool, and if there is no one around to wield it, even the best weapon is useless. Their abilities, he adds, are on opposite sides of the sword and true battle purity. Everything else is simply impure. Kim Yurin warns that if he hunts Yunjun, that impurity will be the exact reason he loses. The man just laughs, a D-rank support whom the queen is so obsessed with. Now he is actually intrigued. Saying goodbye, he claims he will crush them both, Yunjun and his worthless impurity. Several days pass. Shin Juno slowly opens his eyes, lying in a bed. He thinks he has slept for several days straight, yet his physical condition still has not returned to normal. It is likely not from forging the demonic weapon, but rather due to the drain from Elizabeth's absorption skill. He must check if there is any way to neutralize these exhausting side effects, but after thinking it over, Shin Juno still cannot track down that sneaky cat. He can only hope things turn out fine, since she is a familiar he can summon by force. Elizabeth knows this well, but she is probably just fascinated by this new world. Unless she starts acting strangely, she is likely just wandering the streets making friends with random passersby. Meanwhile, Shin Juno has a reward waiting right before him, a mischievous treasure chest. Who would have thought he would actually lay eyes on one of these in real life? This random reward is something players often encounter. While a random item drops, it is not 100% random, as the prize is specifically tailored to what the owner currently needs. But here is the catch. This system is missing some key details. For instance, you might get a massive, razor-sharp sword built purely for attack, which cannot block a single blow, or a sturdy shield that absorbs any impact, only to randomly reflect that damage onto someone nearby. Despite these major flaws, the real issue is that these items are actually still very usable. Countless people have tried to wield them despite their defects, and in the end, blood always gets spilled. If the chest contains exactly what he currently needs, then it has to be a recovery item to quickly restore his depleted mana reserve. Shin Juno is fairly certain of the kind of tool that will appear. The real question is what devastating flaw this item will carry. Suddenly, a bizarre object materializes right in Shin Juno's hand, the trader's gluttony. This item grants the user the mana leak skill, while its mana drain effectiveness is proportional to how positive the target feels towards the owner. Right on cue, Elizabeth wanders back into the room. Shin Juno realizes this skill is incredibly annoying. A simple mana drain is quite useful on its own, but having To rely on a target's positive affection makes it feel deeply sinister and manipulative. Elizabeth just stares, clueless as to why her master is so annoyed. A cat outside spots a sudden visitor, thinking to herself that a total stranger has just arrived. Stepping out of his car, Kimik Hayek looks around, immediately disappointed by this rundown neighborhood. He wonders why Taehyun would ever let his support hunter live in a place like this. Especially since Taehyun always acts so generous, Kimik Hayek turns his eyes to the house. The guild leader realizes that despite the cheap look, this hunter is worth the recruitment effort. He wanted a personal support, and this guy fits, even without Kim Yurin's report. He knows something highly unusual went down here. Shin Juno did something wild to Taehyun. The raw energy radiating from him could easily shatter a barrier and strike an opponent. Kimik Hayek has no idea why such a powerful hunter is still just a D rank. But he clearly has the raw talent to reach an A rank, if not even higher. It makes sense why Taehyun wanted him. Kimik Hayek realizes he needs to act fast. If this talented hunter does not belong to Taehyun yet, he must claim him right now. Right then Shin Juno steps outside, asking how a powerful guild leader tracked down his home. He calmly points out that there is absolutely no legal way to obtain his private address. Kimik Hayek brushes it off, claiming that detail is completely irrelevant right now. Usually normal hunters are absolutely thrilled when a top-tier guild comes knocking at their door. He offers his hand, expecting the young support to be deeply honored by this personal visit. And get this, Shin Juno completely ignores the gesture, stating he has zero interest in chatting. He just wants to get his assistant support license renewed. Kimik Hayek scoffs. He admits he would normally offer a second chance, if not for his promise to Taehyun. After the chaos this support caused in the dungeon, he is viewed as a complete monster. Yet the guild leader promises he always rewards exceptional power with extreme luxury. He offers unmatched benefits that no other guild could ever hope to duplicate. But Shin Juno remains entirely unfazed, admitting he is surprised by the man's sheer arrogance. Honestly, the guild leader's supreme confidence is amusing, but it changes absolutely nothing. The young hunter gives Kimik Hayek the exact same answer he gave to Taehyun before. There is simply nothing they can offer that would ever catch his attention. This rejection makes Kimik Hayek furious. Kim Yurin had acted with the exact same disrespect. They both treat the mighty Shinhwa guild like some kind of joke, but he vows to change that. Soon, both of them will beg for his mercy. Meanwhile, our hero makes his next move. Taking public transit to the association is a massive pain. Since almost every active hunter drives their own car, the poor transit options make sense. As he walks, Shin Juno accidentally bumps into a stranger and quickly apologizes. He realizes his senses have not fully recovered yet. The mysterious passerby keeps walking. Something about that man's face felt incredibly familiar to the young hunter. Shin Juno quickly spins around to check, but the stranger has completely vanished. Could it really be him? Is Dojin actually alive? Under the hood, the stranger smirks. He recognized him instantly. It was indeed Shin Juno, out in the city. Active dungeon gates are being closely monitored under standard protocols. Heavy guards stand watch as a veteran hunter with a massive hammer prepares his team. He tells them that if preparations are complete, it is time to move. For any gate ranked C or higher, even elite hunters can get killed instantly. One small mistake is all it takes, so absolutely nothing can be left to chance. A young mage admits she is terrified, as this is her first C-rank gate. Shin Juno observes the leader, realizing this massive tank is a highly seasoned veteran. If he just listened to him, there shouldn't be any major issues, though it wasn't. His place to judge, the masked mage told Shin Junseo he looked pretty experienced. He had an intelligent gaze and a firm stride. The hooded masked man watched Shin Junseo closely, recognizing him as a simple D-rank support who specialized in weapon creation. He had been a hunter for 2 years, but only had 1 year of actual field experience. At the start of this year, there was the Daewon Guild. It was Yun Taehyun's guild. The young Moon Dojin asked his brother why. They were aiming for a simple D-rank gate with their guild's high standards, shouldn't they be shooting for something much higher? The guild leader, Yun Taehyun, replied that although it was D-rank, the difficulty was actually quite high with plenty of rare resources. In those specific dungeons, the profit margin was absolutely massive compared to the manpower needed. Because of that, major guilds often targeted them, but Moon Dojin argued that D-rank dungeons were nothing more than pocket change for a massive guild. Yun Taehyun insisted. that their rising guild was different and they could gain a lot, even if they only walked away with half of their target. They could easily upgrade the gear of their most hardworking members and train them using exclusive equipment. Smiling warmly, Moon Duyun told his younger brother, Moon Dajin, that they just had to wait a little longer. Soon, the entire world would know about the Dawan Guild, but that never happened. Was Moon Duyun really gone? It was unbelievable, tragic news. Moon Dajin muttered that it made absolutely no sense. His brother was a highly respected, veteran B-rank hunter. He could never die in a low-level dungeon like that, yet the official reports showed it was no ordinary gate. The investigator explained that the party had entered an underrated, misclassified zone. A deeper probe later revealed it was actually an extremely high-risk location. Instantly, Moon Dajin realized his brother's death was definitely not a simple accident. He insisted that the gate was bought through a legitimate official auction. His brother would never cut corners. The investigator then asked if his brother had left any final messages. Moon Dajin demanded to know who ran that auction. Something was completely wrong here. Something far beyond basic common sense had occurred. The official told him that his brother's body would be released 2 days after the autopsy was finished. It was incredibly fortunate that his remains were even recovered at all. The clerk noted there was only a single survivor who managed to bring back all the victims' bodies. Meanwhile, Shin Juno reviewed the files on his phone while continuing on his route. Back at headquarters, Moon Dajin stared at the files, thinking this support guy must have been incredibly lucky. The raid team prepared to step through the portal. Their tank hoped they would finish this raid smoothly without any major injuries, but Moon Dajin could not stop thinking about how every B-rank veteran, including his own brother, had perished. How could a weak rookie D-rank supporter emerge as the sole survivor? It felt highly suspicious. If that support hunter was somehow involved in the tragedy, Moon Dajin was determined to uncover the truth and seek ultimate vengeance, no matter the price. Soon, a security officer ordered the party to halt. Their vanguard tank quickly explained they were there for the scheduled gate raid. Just then, another hunter ran up, claiming he was simply running late. He flashed his official permit to prove it, asking who else would willingly show up at a dangerous dungeon gate for no reason. The guard. He apologized and let them pass. Still, the hunter warned them. If they had kept him out, every single person here would have died. Approaching the gates, the hunter notes the victim is named Moon Dujin. He adds that seeing his candidate hero's true power is going to be pretty interesting. Inside the dungeon, a headless monster known as the Duke lies dead. It is a B-rank threat, but the tank boasts they beat it. Still, the masked hunter senses something is wrong with this picture. This was supposed to be a C-rank dungeon. It feels B-rank. If someone was hiding their strength until now, things could get very dangerous. The tank points out that their success is actually thanks to their support assistant. He never expected such talent. Shin Juno just shrugs it off. He downplays it, saying he only helped a bit, and defeating this beast alone is impossible. During the fight, the tank had been thrown flat on the cold floor. His shattered hammer lies nearby, and the masked hunter wishes he had brought his real gear. With his usual equipment, this raid would have been a walk in the park. Since the vanguard needs a new weapon, the support offers to craft one on the spot. But once they leave this place, he must keep this strange ability a secret. Swinging the blade, the hunter marvels at its incredible cutting power and solid weight. This thing is leagues ahead of his standard gear, leaving him completely stunned. How can a lowly D-rank support instantly forge something this overpowered? Narrowing his eyes, the masked hunter confronts our hero and demands his true identity. Shin Juno calmly fires back, asking when they even became close enough to trade secrets. They do not even know each other, and he certainly never shared his name. The stranger nods in agreement before deciding to rephrase his question entirely. He asks if our hero knows the support player named Munto. Pulling down his hood, he reveals he is Munto's older brother and the Dawan Guild master. His brother was a member a year ago, and Moon Dujin wants some straight answers. He does not care about secrecy, he just wants the truth about his brother. He needs to know what happened a year ago and if Shin Juno was involved. Suddenly, another hunter with a massive sword interrupts them, leaving everyone confused. Carrying a blade on his shoulder, the uninvited guest steps into the chamber. He chuckles, mentioning that things are starting to get pretty interesting in here. The newcomer is shocked that their rising star, Moon Dujin, is still breathing. He never imagined anyone could survive his strike, let alone multiple people. He has no clue where this mysterious copycat came from, but his strength is real. The intruder is clearly an incredibly talented berserker who thrives on pure combat. But the rogue hunter sneers, telling them there is no reason to look so scared. He shifts his gaze, wondering if the rumored D-rank support is actually present. He needs this assistant to take down Taihun, but that does not mean he lives. Hearing this, the swordsman is taken aback, realizing the enemy already knows Shin Juno. The villain smiles, eager to test if this support guy is actually any good. If so, this hunt is going to be way more entertaining than he expected. The rivals clash instantly, their weapons meeting with bone-rattling, monstrous force. Shin Juno realizes he can only block 2 hits before his arms give out. Just defending against this beast is exhausting, and things are quickly getting desperate. Instinct dictated it. Shin Juno had to avoid this monstrous villain at all costs and find a loophole. The villain thought the swordsman was nothing special and completely useless. He did not consider this a fair fight, but Shin Juno agreed anyway. In an instant, the attacker and his sword were completely trapped. Entangled in glowing mana threads, the villain saw a female vampire appear. She blocked his attacks flawlessly as Shin Juno and Elizabeth stood ready. They declared together that the match had officially become a 3 versus 1 battle. With no infected mana left in reserve, the summoner's energy would drain rapidly. In 10 seconds, the familiar summoning would forcibly end. Shin Juno realized his hard-earned trump card would not last much longer. Still, 10 seconds was more than enough time to finish this fierce showdown. The fog skill activated, making physical attacks useless, even though this opponent seemed to share the same combat style as Taihun. There was still a clear difference in their actual levels and gear. Elizabeth noted that either way, this was their final farewell. Her time was up, and Elizabeth's summoning came to a sudden end. She casually remarked it was not a bad run, even if the ending was messy. Left with only his left hand, the attacker gripped his sword tightly. Fighting back in this heavily wounded state was practically an impossible task. The wounded swordsman knew he could still deal some serious damage, but the massive gap in their basic skills remained too wide. Yet seeing his enemy so weakened, a clear window of opportunity opened up. The hunter warned him to drop his weapon if he wanted to live. Surrendering was his only option, though his past actions made the outcome grim. The villain felt completely helpless as he prepared to accept his defeat. Letting go of his blade meant absolute submission, and it clattered to the ground. But Dojin instantly realized this desperate guy had other dangerous plans. The hunter watched as the enemy gathered infected mana for one final strike. He lunged forward with hidden blades, forcing the hunter to react instantly. The opponent activated a hidden magic circle, initiating a sudden teleportation skill. Shin Juno muttered that they were lucky it was only an escape tool. An offensive item would have left the hunter severely injured or worse. Shin Juno promised to reveal the absolute truth about what happened back then. He would explain the tragedy of the Dabin Guild and his older brother. He deserved to know, so they left the cleared dungeon behind. Heading back to the city, the wounded hunters received immediate medical aid. Mun Jin admitted he felt terrible about how things had played out. They had to lie and blame monsters for the deaths of their allies. The guild would never accept that a rogue hunter did this to them. According to the guards, only 7 people were registered on their team. Minutes after they departed, a mysterious figure swiped an access card. Slipping through the gate late, they used a highly convincing fake credential. It fooled the guards completely, though it might have been real. Shin Juno recalled a similar incident from an underrated dungeon auction last year. The truth loomed. He knew what they wanted, but a small squad could not do it alone. If the association fell, everything would vanish in an instant. The mastermind behind this had easily tricked the association. Maybe this figure is just too powerful, utterly untouchable. The hero was sure Mun Jin saw it the same way. These villains are no joke, not even close. Shin Juno explained this was why they kept the truth from the families. This included the brother of the leader. Some could not handle it. They kept silent to protect them. Hearing this, Mun Jin nodded in understanding. Reporting this to the association would be totally useless. The culprit would escape anyway. Mun Jin asked about his support skills. He understood being a D-rank creator was pretty much pointless. But why hide it? The hero said it is a long story. It would take too long to explain. Before last year, his skills were completely useless. He could barely make a few simple swords and felt incredibly ashamed. He barely even deserved the D-rank title. Then everything changed. On the brink of death, he suddenly awakened an entirely new power. That power saved him, making him the sole survivor of the tragedy. It sounds hard to believe, but once the mastermind is exposed, he plans to tell the truth to the entire world and their families. Still, hiding the truth like this was wrong, completely wrong. The hero apologized, swearing to find the culprits. He will make them pay soon. Mun Jin noted this was more than support. Even with the young man feeling guilty, too many secrets were hidden. Mun Jin realized he was now no different from Shin Juno. He saw the truth, yet he had to keep utterly silent. He was hiding secrets from the families who deserved to hear the truth. The hunter swore he would never stop until those killers paid dearly. Until then, Mun Jin promised to stand right by Shin Juno. They only had each other now. Suddenly, a strange magic circle flared. Corrupted mana pulsed wildly, right inside the dark, abandoned room. Suddenly, the cowardly villain appeared, desperately clutching his sword. He screamed wild threats, but a cold voice suddenly cut him off. Kim Yurin mocked him, asking who on earth he was yelling at. It was a pathetic sight, seeing him ramble after a total defeat. She coldly noted it might be better if he just came back dead. That way, she could at least sacrifice his soul for her plan. Surprisingly, they still expected a lot from him, though she had no idea why. Suddenly, a bizarre, floating object appeared right in front of him. He stared in total shock, but she simply told him to swallow it down. This creepy little parasite was meant to replace his severed arm. Horrified, he screamed back, asking if she seriously expected him to eat that. She just smiled, noting they did not exactly have a trusting relationship. But in his current state, he did not have a choice anyway. Losing an arm is a fatal setback, so he had to swallow his pride. Could it be his? The young man picked up the bizarre creature and studied it closely. Meanwhile, the villain swallowed the strange substance. A bizarre transformation stirred deep inside him. Kim Yurin noted that those two actually fit together much better than she originally expected. She assumed the process would take all night. Shockingly, the victim's hand was already fully healed. Healing complete, the woman explained this was only its primary form, needing time to adapt. Soon it would automatically evolve. If the young man disliked it, he could speak up. He could admit his doubts right away. To her, this creature was basically her child. She added a chilling boast. With this beast, she could finally do whatever she wanted. The villain grimaced in annoyance. Deep down, he silently swore to destroy them all. First, he needed to eliminate that troublesome female vampire, Moon Dojin, to clear his path. Next was Shin Jun, the kid who broke his hand. Meanwhile, the airport was incredibly packed. A massive crowd gathered at the gates, making a girl wonder if a celebrity arrived. Her companion shook his head. It wasn't some famous star landing here at all. Instead, it was a legendary hunter from the Hungmu Guild, one of the nation's best. The girl gasped in realization. She remembered hearing dark rumors about their immense power. Still, she wondered, why would such elite, high-tier hunters be waiting around the terminal? The young man explained that according to news reports, they were invited to the United Kingdom. A critical crisis had unfolded. Apparently, a highly volatile and complex gate opened up there. On the scene, a reporter gripped her microphone, urging her camera crew to stay sharp. The target had arrived. They quickly swarmed Hunter Wu Hain, asking about her dawn raid. Rumors swirled that she pocketed an absolute fortune from the British government for her victory. As the powerful chief of the Hungmu Guild, could Wu Hain truly dominate the world? Pushy reporters demanded answers. However, her tight-lipped secretary stepped in to block the cameras. She announced no interviews today. Official questions would be answered at a later press conference. Escaping in their car, the secretary let out a sigh and praised her leader's effort. The day was finally over, but in 2 days, a major group interview was scheduled. They were set to face the press alongside representatives from the elite Santa Guild. Suddenly, the secretary dropped a bombshell. Traces of the mysterious executioner surfaced 2 days ago. The girl confirmed the news, noting those tracks were found inside the glitched Bapun dungeon. Eyewitness reports from the gate's security indicated a highly suspicious individual had appeared there. This stranger lingered behind the rest, perfectly matching the dark profile of the rogue executioner. According to the Hunter Association, only 2 survivors managed to escape that dungeon alive. The first was an elite B-rank assassin, the other, a weak D-rank support. Wu Hain was stunned. How could a bottom-tier D-rank support have possibly survived? Honestly, how does a weak healer survive a direct, brutal clash with the executioner? Did that assassin possess some insane, hidden power? The secretary simply shook her head. She had no answers. Currently, both survivors claimed their allies died in a tragic accident. That explanation was too clean. Wu Hain sat in silence, knowing something was off. In her mind, there were only two realistic scenarios that made any sense here. Either they willingly allied with the executioner, or they were ruthlessly coerced into silence. Put it on my schedule immediately, Wu Hain ordered, wanting answers as soon as possible. She had to debrief those survivors personally. What secrets were they desperately hiding? Elsewhere, a young man stared blankly at his computer screen, scrolling through endless files. He doubted he would find anything useful. Just as expected, the searches came up empty. The database held absolutely zero records on active greatsword users inside the National Archives. That mysterious stranger was actually an unofficial hunter who usually looked completely different. But one thing was absolutely certain: the guy was directly connected to the destruction. He was definitely tied to the massive chaos inside those bugged dungeons with rank errors. Honestly, the very existence of these glitchy rank error dungeons was incredibly suspicious. It could all be the doing of the shadowy organization he worked for. With their incredible potential, everyone trapped in that deep dungeon with Elizabeth had the potential to become legendary future heroes if they hadn't been targeted. Losing them would have been a massive loss for the future of this world. The enemy keeps faking dungeon ranks and sending assassins, but they operate separately. This strongly suggests these deadly killers also operate out in the real world. Later on, Kim Yurin met Shin Juno at a bar, hoping he would dress up a bit. She joked that she expected more stylish clothes, but maybe that was asking too much. Shin Juno admitted he rarely visited places like this, especially since he became so suspicious. He honestly didn't think his private contact info was in the public database. But Kim Yurin warned him that the association database isn't very secure. She suggested that Kim Ik-huk had already visited the support desk looking for him. She added that she finally understood why the confident guild leader wanted him. Still, Kim Yurin told Shin Juno not to worry about that greedy boss. She wouldn't leak his secrets since she invited him out of pure personal interest. Then she playfully asked if he came because of her or just business. Kim Yurin poured him a drink, but Shin Juno remained completely serious. He replied that this was definitely not a conversation to have over alcohol. If she had nothing important to say, he was ready to leave immediately. But Kim Yurin cut straight to the point, admitting she was highly curious. She had lost consciousness right at the end of that dangerous dungeon. Somehow, Shin Juno managed to defeat that terrifying boss monster all by himself. Even a powerful hunter like Tahan didn't stand a single chance against it. Shin Juno calmly told her to ask Tahan instead, claiming he was just a weak D-rank support. He insisted that while she was unconscious, he couldn't really do anything. He just used up his last bit of energy to quickly forge a sword. Kim Yurin giggled, finding his ridiculous excuse to be quite funny. Some lunatic with a massive sword was roaming around hunting down actual hunters. She even joked about becoming this mysterious madman's very next victim. Shin Juno warned her that if his theories were right, she was targeted. Entering that corrupted rank error dungeon meant they were specifically after her. Out of everyone who went in, she was the sole independent hunter. That meant the organization would target whoever lacked backing from a major guild. It sounded incredibly logical, but Shin Juno had overlooked one critical detail. Kim Yurin pointed out that she wasn't the only unprotected person there. There was another D-rank support present who also had no guild backing. And compared to her, this support hunter was significantly weaker. So if his theory was correct, wasn't Shin Juno himself in grave danger? She smirked, offering to protect him if he ever felt too scared. But Shin Juno simply got up to leave, telling her to take his warnings seriously because her life was genuinely on the line before walking out. Yurin watched him leave the meeting place. Right after, she made a call to confirm. She quickly contacted the necessary people to report that the young man had just left. She had to do everything possible to repay her debt, especially with a caller named Rat Bastard. Shin Juno waited in a dark alley until a stranger called out to him. He remarked that they had not met in ages, adding that he quite admired the kid's guts. He never expected a mere support to wander around alone at night after just a few days. Shin Juno was face to face with that very same executioner, who was already reaching for his weapon. The villain sneered that he could try running or screaming, but it would all be useless. Shin Juno calmly pointed out that his enemy was already trapped. Right on cue, Shin Juno unleashed his powerful dark space skill to seal them in. The woman behind this clever trap was seriously talented, and as long as the barrier stood, nobody on the outside could ever tell what was happening. Her spell did not just block the entrance, it also built a virtual space mimicking reality without showing the contaminated mana. Because of this, he was slightly worried he might not sense when other people were nearby. He figured this ruthless assassin had already wiped out everyone who used to live here. But Shin Juno's secret network already knew his every move. Shin Juno admitted that he fully expected to be hunted down sooner or later. He knew he would be targeted, and the executioner scoffed that he was the ultimate prey. The killer grew absolutely furious. How dare a mere support talk back to him like that? How could someone so useless face him? In response, Shin Juno summoned a massive sword. His massive blade matched his enemy, who realized a normal attack would not suffice. Shin Juno smiled. This was the first time in an entire year he could fight one-on-one. He happily added that, since they were isolated, he did not have to worry about witnesses. He sneered that if his opponent truly believed he was just some helpless support, then that assumption was not entirely wrong, but there was a major catch. The raging executioner immediately lunged forward to attack him. Activating his network world skill, Shin Juno told him he would soon see the truth. Meanwhile, a car screeches to a halt, and get this, the master of the Wooing Guild steps out. Wooing glances around carefully. There are no visible traces of a gate, but she senses danger. She could clearly feel the contaminated mana thanks to her rare saint class. This prestigious class uses both standard mana and a unique, highly potent divine power. Holy divine power is the exact opposite of the corrupted, infected mana. Though holy classes cannot see this dark energy, they can easily sense it. Her secretary suggests reporting this strange anomaly directly to the Hunter Association. After all, finding contaminated mana right in a crowded residential area is incredibly dangerous. Wooing simply draws her staff, ordering him to wait 30 minutes before calling them. If she is not back by then, only then should they sound the alarm. Until her return, there was absolutely no reason to cause a massive panic. The secretary watched Wooing walk off, staring blankly at a solid brick wall ahead. But Wooing definitely sensed something dark nearby. She approached the barrier and phased straight through the solid brick-like mist. The stunned secretary realized she could no longer see or even sense her boss. Anxiety washed over her, but she desperately prayed that Wooing would remain safe. Meanwhile, the killer relentlessly pressed his lethal attack. He mocked Shin Juno's weak tricks before pulling out a 38 caliber mana grenade. This military-grade weapon packed serious explosive firepower, but Shin Juno was completely unfazed.